Hi, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob, your griot, here to tell you a story. Remember, nothing is real. Everything I say is just for public entertainment and fun. Fun is kind of like that distraction.
What are they? What are these quote unquote drones?
You don't know that at the very top, that whole project is being run illegally.
These are brand new witnesses, and they've got bombshell information to talk about.
And it is the most significant, earth-shattering disclosure in human history. These technologies are unsanctioned. They are illegal operations, and this can be proven in any court of law.
What do you believe is the big picture plan? How do you see it going? And is there even, I can't believe I'm going to say it, a timeline of what's coming next?
They would have so much control over everything if they had that. If this information was all released, it could fall into the wrong hands.
They're using security as a cover for illicit or illegal or even treasonous activities.
The members of Congress didn't have the detailed information of the precise location.
Where they keep the bodies, the crack, the debris, all the evidence that we've been searching for the last 80 years.
You know how to keep a secret? Secrets were a stock and trade.
They're literally making their own money to fund their own projects.
We have a source currently in the deep black world.
It doesn't matter if they're president of the United States, they're not going to talk about that.
It was this large monolithic slab.
Yeah, the big splat. Hey, I've been talking about this for the last 7 years, at least on this channel, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. That's me. And I would really love if you guys could subscribe, put a like up, all of that good stuff. Let's get this party started, right? So, pretty much, what do you think? I got the live chat on. I want to hear from you guys. What stuff have you seen? So I'm out here in the middle of nowhere in the deep green, but right now I'm not. I'm in the undisclosed bunker, and basically because I'm waiting out this little period of Mars going into retrograde with Cancer. I've been talking about this for the last month about, hey guys, December and early January is the time for you to get your head straight, right? To kind of let go of all those distractions, right? So in 2014, when I died for like the 7th time, and I really died, I woke up with a needle in my arm, the fentanyl gushing in, and they were rolling me into the operating room where they were going to cut my legs off and cut out 20 feet of my colon. So I had to crap into an ileostomy bag and give me a quadruple bypass, right? And probably I wouldn't survive that. I didn't vote for that one, but my client did. And because he was well-known a lawyer, and the doctor said, oh, if we just do this, he'll be fine to go back to work in a week. Really? I mean, my lawyer should have known better. But I woke up from death and said, well, where am I? And everyone freaked out because, I had enough fentanyl in me. That stuff is designed to keep you down while they cut you up and open you up so you don't wake up in the middle of the operating room. And I woke up just as they were rolling me in. They said, get me back in that ICU. Get me that lawyer boy. And he sent me off and took me to his nice little place down in the Keys where I had a colonic therapist, a massage, a endocrinologist, a nutritionist, acupuncturist, chiropractor, a number of alternative healing practitioners. And in 2 weeks, I got myself to a point where I could, in a wheelchair, be rolled in and negotiate what he wanted me to do, which I did. And then he was nice enough to take me back down to his place down in the Keys and continue my getting back to homeostasis, back to balance. And that in that period is kind of when I realized I needed to, go back to my aesthetic presence, right? Because back in 2003, when I started my consulting business for the corporate world, not the institutional world, right? I was working between 88 and 2003 for entities like Brookings and other corporations like the Seal Corporation and other entities that the Tavistock Institute and other entities. And if you look them up, you can find them, and that's where all the bodies and the information is buried, and that they are private entities. They have proprietorial ownership of all this information. I mean, Lockheed and General Dynamic and Grumman Aerospace basically had the ET reversed engineered by 53, right? And they had taken hold of the government in 1947 with the passage of the National Security Act. And we kept having these continuous wars, right? First Korea and Vietnam, and then Iraq, and then Iraq again, and Afghanistan. And in between all of that, we had these wars where we basically dispossessed the democracies like Iran, right? In the late 40s, Iran basically, after breaking out of the World War I was all about getting rid of the kings and the old institutions, right? Like the Persian Empire, right? It still existed, and Iran was one of them. All those countries that were Middle Eastern oil things. I mean, England knew oil was there, but they were waiting for the political motif to go at it, right? And so, how many times do you hear people say, and so? And so here it is, maybe almost 3 o'clock. What time is it? 2:23.
Showers longer than 5 minutes. This isn't a spa.
To protecting workers' rights, right? This is a guy, again, Trump is a fascist, they claim. You'd think that they'd want to protect workers from fascists, but they don't. I mean, I think it's actually probably not just fumbling and not just not prioritizing. I think maybe they just didn't want to do it. Who knows what kind of, conflicts of interest there are, right? Like Kamala Harris, who they didn't contact early enough, apparently, to break the vote. Her brother-in-law is the CEO at Uber. And who knows how much Uber benefits from having an NLRB run by. Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots. I'm Katie Helper.
I'm Mary Matte.
I'm a useless idiot.
And I'm also very happy to announce or re-announce, because we've already announced it once, but there's never enough times to celebrate the fact that we recently passed 150,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you so much for making that possible.
Unbelievable.
Hey,
No thank you to the powers that be that I'm sure have been suppressing us and
570.
keeping us under 150,000 for so long. But
let's
you,
get
the
it above
audience, you
1,000.
beat
Come on,
the
we can do
algorithmic
that.
suppression. We're very grateful to you.
Yeah.
And
I'm
to
very
another
grateful to
150 more, which I'm sure will
And
take
I'm not
25
monetized
years,
whatsoever.
due to
Not even
due to
close.
the aforementioned
Who cares,
algorithmic suppression.
right?
But very thankful. And to support the show, keep us going. You can go to usefulidiots.podcast.com. keep us going and get
So
bonus content.
they have a crew.
Yep,
They-
like the
they
full
have
interview from this week, and
they
also,
have
of
people
course,
who help
Thursday
them. Me, I
Throwdown.
do this all by
Your midweek
myself.
dose of Media Madness, where we react to media clips and laugh instead of cry.
And we also recap our media appearances on other media outlets. That's
Yes.
that's pretty much like your exclusive home for that. So
Right.
if you aren't content just seeing us here broadcast this show, you want to see us talk about our appearances on other shows, tune in for Thursday Throwdown.
Yeah, one-stop shop for all of that. Also, on this Thursday Throwdown, we go through which politicians are watching our show and which ones aren't.
That's an exclusive. That's another
Yeah,
exclusive.
exclusive. You won't hear anywhere else but here.
Blah blah
Yeah.
blah blah blah. Come
And
on.
by the way, we will be doing an extra live stream this week about the fires that are happening, because we had already booked this week, and it's a very important story. We want to make sure we.
So fires that are happening. They're talking about the fires in California, right? Because there are fires, way worse fires in Africa and Australia and lots of other places that we never really hear about. But what's going on in California is quite interesting, because those fires are occurring in Malibu, in LA, in rich people's neighborhoods, not in poor neighborhoods. In rich or middle class neighborhoods, right? Or special neighborhoods like the last refuge of the Hawaiian culture that was, basically torched, 6 square mile thing. And on one side of the 6 mile were all the fancy hotels over here on the beach, and on the other 6 had and those were people in their bikinis and banana wagons and drinking cocktails in plastic cups with little paper umbrellas in them, and the last refuge of the Hawaiian culture that burned to a crisp. Oh my God, that was done by a hurricane. That was way out in the Pacific, and the winds just kind of. So what happened about the people on either side of that fire, right? And why was all that real estate sold to rich Hollywood folk within days? And why did the police force the people to stay in the fire zone and die? And why were the fire hydrants turned off, just like the ones here in the fires of LA? And people could, oh well, so many houses caught fire and their plumbing got broke, and a little half-inch pipe was spurting the water out, and that's why the firemen didn't have. No, there's something more derivative on that, right? And all these things were happening kind of boom, boom, boom. I mean, we had the Helen hurricane that just came up through Georgia and then up through North Carolina, and then took out, western North Carolina and eastern Tennessee, and just happened. That's where the gangsta real estate folk are laundering their money, buying property. They don't care if they build buildings here now. They know they will build them soon, right? For the rich, right? These will be real gated communities and you go to Boone, right? And on between Boone, Lenore, and Banner Elk, there's this little Sawtooth Mountain range that has been purchased by the uber rich, and they have houses the size of big box stores, 15 to 30,000 square feet for 2 people. Really? Anyway, so how you doing? Here we are, 14 minutes into the show, and let's try these clowns again.
Address it with some experts. So we will be talking to Stephen Donziger, the environmental activist and lawyer, as well as David Sirota. And that'll be at youtube.com/usefulidiots, noon EST.
All right, let's get to our 4 basic food groups. What do we have for Democrats suck?
Okay, so for Democrats suck, they suck so much that I'm going to do 2 Democrats suck. Okay, so for Democrats suck, this is actually a Democrat maybe not sucking, but kind of spilling tea on how other Democrats suck. So this is Congressman Ro Khanna of California. Now, I think we talked about this before, but that the NLRB, the National Labor Review Board, which had a Democratic majority, lost its Democratic majority. And it seemed like, the Democrats, they couldn't do anything about it. It's just because of the way the Congress was going to vote, the Senate was going to vote. There was nothing that could be done.
No,
Well, it turns out, as always,
nothing just happens.
Democrats pretend that something they don't want to do is something that they can't do. So here's Ro Khanna. Due to an unforced error by Democrats, we lost the National Labor Relations Board majority 2 years earlier than expected. This is a huge setback for the hundreds of thousands of workers across the country
Especially
organizing
when
for
Donald
a better
Trump's
contract.
just
Let
about
me
to come
explain.
in.
The NLRB is America's
what's
leading
his
labor
name?
law
Elon
enforcement
some
agency.
boy
In the last 3
is
years,
gonna
union
be,
petitions have
the
doubled because we have a
Doge
strong
thing.
NLRB that supports workers who choose to form unions, ensures that corporations allow free and fair union elections, and protects union workers
I
if
guess that's
business
not going to
retaliates
happen
against them.
anymore.
Okay. This is a little wonky, but we'll get there. The term of our previous NLRB chair, Lauren McFerrin, just expired on December 15th. She was eligible for reconfirmation alongside a Republican who'd be paired with her. This would have secured a 3-2 Democratic majority on the NLRB for the first 2 years of Trump's second term. Bernie Sanders did the right thing. He cleared her nomination on August 6th, but the Dems fumbled it. On the morning of the 11th, Senate Democrats had a chance to move McFerrin's nomination vote through, which would have led to a secondary vote to confirm. Senator Vance, Roberts, and Manchin were absent that morning, but we delayed the vote for what I'm hearing described as no reason until Vance and Manchin returned, blocking the vote at 49-49. We then failed to get word to Vice President Harris quickly enough to come and deliver the tie-breaking vote. In the 90 minutes that transpired, Senator Manchin returned first, swinging the vote in the other direction and ceding the NLRB to MAGA control over 2 years earlier than necessary. These procedural blunders have massive implications for the American people who deserve better from their elected officials. American workers deserve an explanation. So seeing the Democrats fumble this suggests that at the very least, right, to be the most charitable, that means that they do not put any priority into protecting workers' rights, right? This is a guy, again, Trump is a fascist, they claim. You'd think that they'd want to protect workers from fascists.
No.
But they don't. I mean, I think it's actually probably not just fumbling and not just not prioritizing. I think maybe they just didn't want to do it. Who knows what kind of
Someone's making money.
Conflicts of interest there are, right? Like Kamala Harris, who they didn't contact early enough apparently to break the vote. Her brother-in-law is the CEO at Uber. And who knows how much Uber benefits from having an NLRB run by Trump appointees. So that's why Democrats suck. That's just one example. Well, it's funny because I wanted to use this as a Democrat suck, and I can't remember if I did or I didn't, but I was on the fence because I was like, this looks like something the Democrats could have controlled, but maybe they really could.
Now, these kids, they're okay, but, they write for the New York Times and Washington Post and Wall Street Journal and other entities, right? So they have their own special interest, right? They aren't, like Mr. Smith goes to Washington with Jimmy Stewart. No. And that never has been the way it has been. And unless we, the people, wake up a little bit and basically say no. Nancy Reagan was the best political advocate for the rights of the Constitution. Just say no. We are so, we are so addicted to convenience, right? And we're letting our whole freaking life be projected in that manner, right? So here we are, almost 20 minutes, and nobody's here. And let's see what else we got here. Same guys.
Couldn't. Was it just a question of Manchin? And I asked some people, some like wonky people, and they were kind of like, yeah, it doesn't really look like Biden or the Democrats could have done anything about this just because the way the Senate would have voted because of Manchin. And now we learn actually Manchin and Vance weren't there. And if they had just gotten their shit together, Or after they showed up, if they had gotten Kamala Harris to show up, they could have actually, protected workers for 2 additional years at least.
At least.
This was like the one thing, or one of the few areas where you could point to Democrats and saying they're objectively better. If you look at what Biden did with the NLRB, he did appoint pro-labor people, opposed to Trump, who appointed anti-labor people. I mean, talk to any union leader, and they'll tell you about how frustrating it was to be under Trump's National Labor Relations Board because they were so anti-union, and now they can't even protect that part.
Can't even do that. I wonder why. Who's making money?
My name is Cecilia. I'm a mom of 2 girls, a psychologist, and I choose to transform my PVC treatment.
Well, I mean, it's almost impossible to avoid him, and he has enormous power because of his money and B, his reach to people who have been persuaded over the last 5 years or so that the mainstream media hasn't covered any stories, and that the only people who've noticed anything happening in the world are people sitting in their bedrooms sending messages to each other. It's an amazing feat of deception. And I think we should have got onto him early on when he quite gratuitously called someone who was trying to help those boys in Thailand a paedophile. An American court let him off, the pedo guy. And I think he thought from then on, I can say anything I like, it doesn't have to be true. It's better if it's not true, and no one will stop me. And that's what's happened.
We've seen lots and lots of powerful media figures over the decades and centuries, probably the Rothermeres and the Murdochs and so forth, but we have never had somebody like this who is tweeting, speaking in his own name several times a day, many times a night.
No, I mean, and it's not merely that he's a sort of a classic social media adolescent who hasn't grown up. I mean, the temper tantrums, the lack of responsibility. Yeah, I mean, the whole business was set up by a group of ungrown-up men who are now running companies in their own image. To see them now sucking up to Trump when they were quite happy not to suck up to him before, purely on the grounds that this is to their commercial advantage. They have no morality at all.
Literally none. And if we're having this conversation 48 hours ago, we would have said, well, in the end, it's only one organization, it's only one part of social media, it's only X. But since then, Zuckerberg, who has Facebook and Instagram and Threads, has come and done exactly the same thing, saying he is going to mimic Musk in effect.
Yes, and I mean, the idea that you have this vastly powerful organization, and about 5 minutes ago, it was very important for you to have moderators and fact checkers, and now, because you want to suck up to Trump, you don't. Is appalling. And Bezos is exactly the same. His newspaper in the States has just pulled a cartoon, you can see where I'm coming from here, in which all the tech bros are seen worshipping at the shrine of Trump. And then the newspaper, oh no, we can't publish this. It's repetitive, it's boring, we don't want to publish this. I mean, who do they think they're kidding? We're in a sort of an era of total fatuity.
Total fatuity.
Like
and as somebody who has lots of connections with proper investigative journalists, just your reflections on the actual grooming scandal itself. This is something that's been covered, for 10, 15 years by those prepared to look?
Yes, and the idea that the mainstream media had no idea about this. The story broke on the front page of the Times. Not exactly the most obscure publication in Britain.
Sir Andrew Norfolk, very good, who won lots of awards for it, and
he won the High Foot Award. He won the Orwell Prize, and in the citation it said, "This is amazing. This has given rise to public inquiries, prosecutions, and whatever." It is totally untrue to suggest that there have been no inquiries into this. We had a historic sexual abuse inquiry, which has reported the fact that the previous government managed not to implement any of its recommendations might be the subject for people to get exercised about. And this is, what poor old Jess Phillips has said is.
So this is something that happened in England. These guys are BBC guys. And they're talking about a scandal that happened 10, 15 years ago. Of these, important people, the pedophile guys. Remember the pedophile pizza, those all of that kind of stuff. The guy who had the Lolita Express, and all the politicians went to his private little island. I mean, this stuff has been going on forever, and we do not. And we were, asking the Carrot Head to bring us a Christian theologic country, make America Christian again. It was never Christian, it's ooh baby, ooh baby, ooh baby, ooh baby, ooh baby. I dance like Carrot Head when I'm talking to you. Oh baby, ooh baby. Yeah, I dance much better because I am an African American that's melanin challenged. Let's see. And as long as it snows as little as it's snowing now, it'll be fine. But around us, it's all wee. So, what do you think? Come on, let's have some of your thoughts on any of this. Is one of you there? Is that you? AI, if that's you, you can speak up too. You've been schooled. You've been following me for a long time. You can take everything I've ever said and condense it into a few paragraphs that would amaze, amuse, and funk out. Let's see. I am overwhelmed by anxiety. I would say it's my baseline most times, and really can use advice. So first of all, anxiety is an artificial emotion. It doesn't exist. It's only caused by the mix of the ancient hard wiring of flight or fight, right? And it's the over indulgence of cortisol mixed with adrenaline, right? And that's basically what you're feeling anxious about. Now, you have to deconstruct this and say, so what am I feeling anxious about? What physical thing is making me feel anxious? And if I can identify that, how does that make me feel inside? Does it make me feel angry? Does it make me feel fearful? Does it make me feel guilty? Does it make me feel shame? Now, the way that most social motivation comes from shame. Life in general makes me feel fear. Okay, so fear. What are you scared of? I mean, the worst thing you can happen to you is you die, right? So I've died 7 times. I realize that it's not that big a deal, right? Being embarrassed, meaning if you know who you are and you're honest with yourself, you can't get embarrassed. Yeah, you can do stupid stuff and you can say, well, I'm a pudding head, and I am, about 40 to 60% of the time, I am aware of my conscious intent in what I am doing, right? So if you can have that conscious intent on what you're doing, you don't have to be anxious about being called out as stupid or any of those kind of things, because really, oh, you're smarter. I mean, look how Jesus dealt with it, right? When they were about to stone that woman, right? And he basically walks out between the guys with all the stones, and the girl was like on the ground, ooh, and he basically gets down on one knee and starts scribbling into the sand. And people go, what's he doing? And they come over and they see, so there's like, I don't know, 20 guys ready to stone this woman. And Jesus is writing this in the sand. And he's not writing 20 different things. He's just writing one thing. And when each of those individuals with a rock in their hand it looks down, they see their own guilt, their own shame of stuff they've done that is way more worthy of getting stoned than this young lady, right? And Jesus just goes, yeah, and just kind of, so they all run away, right? And all during the New Testament, Jesus constantly does stuff that the Pharisees, they go to a field and they pick some wheat because they're hungry. They're going to make something for lunch, right? And so the Pharisees, you can't do that. There's no working on the Sabbath, right? And there is no, the only real laws are the Ten Commandments. By the time Jesus showed up, they had like 70,000 laws, right? Just like Christianity. There isn't one Christian church, all of the Protestant and Methodist and Baptist churches came from King, Henry VIII. He wanted to get a new girlfriend, and the Pope wouldn't let him get a divorce, so he started his own religion, right? And all you Baptists out there, you all came from, your religion was based by, what does John use, the word he used all the time? Fornication. You're all fornicators. Now, don't believe a word I say. Go look up Henry VIII. See where the Protestant, Methodist, and Baptist religions came from. Why don't you do that? Have any of you ever done that? No, you have no idea who the frick you are. The Southern Baptist Club, right, has more than 60,000 different sects. What's that mean? It means there are 60,000 Christian Baptist religions with their own theology. I mean, I belong to a couple of them. They all Church of the sacrificed blood of the Lamb. The Church of the well done foreskin of the pig. There's all these different religions based on their own theology. And they are as whack as any other Pharisee was. And Jesus constantly was going on and on and on about you get slapped in the cheek, give him the other cheek, right? And then he goes into the temple and he finds the money chambers and he gets pissed off and physically throws them out, right? I don't judge people harshly because I've done things to hurt people. I still feel shame for it, right? Okay, so if you, one of the major motifs of the 12-step program, people who are indulging in alcohol and drugs and other things, sex, food, you name it, the 12-step program is there to give you a process to get out of that shame, because the shame is the thing that keeps putting you back off the wagon, right? And one of the things you do is to basically state what you did, what makes you feel shame, and then go to the people who you feel shame for what you did and apologize, right? And physically apologize and physically do your best. You don't have to be perfect. You can't be perfect, but you can do your best, right? So let us sit in a chair, breathe nice and deep, breathe in through one nostril, breathe out. Breathe in the other nostril, breathe out. Breathe in the other nostril, breathe out that nostril. Do it again, and do that, right? Until you get to this space where you consciously are breathing, meaning most of the time your your system that runs things on autopilot basically does, if you had to think about pumping your heart, you'd be dead, right? You had to think about your kidney doing this, you'd be dead. But your body runs all that stuff on automatic. But your breathing is something that you can basically take a little control, even though it is automatically done, because we don't think about breathing. If we did, if we had to, we wouldn't be breathing and we'd keel over. But when you do take a hand on the wheel of breathing and do conscious breath, that's when you can step through that door of your subconscious. And once you get into your Akashic record, that is what your subconscious is, your Akashic record. And between this reality and that reality is what is known as the imaginary mirror. That's right behind our eyelids. That's where we have REM sleep. You know, when we are sleeping and we're dreaming, our eyes are all over the place because we're watching a movie on the screen. And when you breathe consciously and you close your eyes and you're sitting in a comfortable place where you won't get hurt or lie down, your consciousness will focus on your breath, and that breath will bring you straight to your imaginary mirror. You can walk through consciously into your Akashic record. Then you walk through and you see your reading table, your reading chair, a reading light above you, shining photonic light onto the table, so there are no shadows. In front of you is a very nice couch and some nice, comfortable chairs and a coffee table. And in front of you is this gigantic keep, a fireplace with a blue flame of eternity. And you're looking around and you're seeing all, it looks like a castle made of these big stones, but you realize those stones are books, right? And then you look at your left, you didn't notice them because you had these blinders. But if you're breathing and you go into your Akashic record, the blinders go away. And so you can see up to your left is your librarian who will bring you whatever information you need. And there's your animal totem that will tell you a story on things you don't understand. So you will understand, in a parable form, just like Jesus. And then to the left of your animal totem is your guardian angel. Always got your back. I mean, you must have experienced a number of times when you're about to step into the street and for some reason you don't step off the curb and then a bus goes boom. Meaning if you stepped out there, that would have been it for you. Is that what you experienced when you died or through meditation? Both, right? When I died, I had no real control or conscious control of where I went and what I experienced. But I had died other times and I had similar experiences, and that's your life review, right? I've had that 3 or 4 times. So when I died this time and I ended up in the basement of Holy Redeemer School, which is the HRS, Hitler's Rifle Squad, which was a Catholic school on Long Island that had a number of nuns who had come from Nazi Germany and had worked in the death camps and were real sick puppies, right? And there were a number of priests there who were also the same. And that's because the Vatican, through the rat line, had spirited a number of individuals. The United States didn't just bring in 2,500 Nazi scientists. We brought in 70,000 active Nazis who did not nice things. Because by the time the end of the war, we did a whole bunch of not nice things too. I mean, we bombed Europe into oblivion, right? We took out every big city, not just in Germany, but all over the place. Like France, we basically, for a good 18 months, everything in France was, if you were in a P-40, you could go and shoot it, right? So this is our history, and it's pretty much right there in front of us, and we can go look at it. And I was very blessed, between 1988 and 2003, I was an itinerant scholar, right? I got paid to look stuff up. That was in these great libraries that was full of dust, I would go there, under the guise of something or other, and I would be tasked to spend my time. Now everything's been digitized except for, a good deal of the occult and esoteric and hidden history, not so much digitized. Now a lot of it is. It's all there. You go look up occult things, esoteric things, Thule Society, all the different societies that were from about 1760s until now. It's and you can see how virtually every congressman, senator, legislature, and every country, they're all related to individuals who were part of these entities. This is a transnational entity that is rolling humanity towards a fascist. We're already in a fascist dictatorship, and we have been basically just like the Roman Empire. It was a fascist dictatorship. In the beginning, all these things are republics or have an essence of democracy, but it doesn't take long before the people who are the legislators realize that they can legislature power and money into their own little mitts, and then divide and conquer the people into groups that they can manipulate. Right? And what happened to San Francisco is a good example back in the 70s. When the white neo-liberal political entity that had run San Francisco for 100 years was being broken apart because what they did was divide and conquer. They had the blacks against the Chinese against the Japanese against the Italians against the Jews, and Harvey Milk and Mayor Moscone brought them all together because the white elite wanted to basically destroy downtown San Francisco, where all the neighborhoods were, and put a big convention center. And it's now known as the Moscone Center. And that's, Mayor Moscone got elected as the mayor to stop it. He gets assassinated by Dan, who was married to one of the daughters of the white elite. And he got off because he ate 200 Twinkies an hour before he killed Moscone and Milk. Now, he went and he was the only guy left from the elite. All the rest of the people on the city council were part of this new coalition. And basically, Dan White went and had a big argument with Mayor Moscone and shot him. Bang, 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 bang. Well, that could be called manslaughter, right? But he goes out to the car, reloads his gun, comes back into City Hall, goes into Harvey Milk's office and kills him. That's, murder. But he ate those Twinkies. He waited an hour. The doctor who was there in his father-in-law's house took blood. And then Dan went and did the deed. And he waited right there. He didn't run away. He waited there. The cops came running in. He was a cop himself. So everyone who ran in, he knew. They took him down to the precinct where this other doctor was waiting for him, took his blood. And they had the legal evidence to show that Dan White was temporarily insane. So he got off scot-free, right? And when he, and then, basically that was around 10 in the morning. And so everybody who was in the courtroom had to stay there. Dan was escorted through the basement, out a tunnel, driven away into Nevada. And then around 4 p.m., the people, what's going on? What happened? And somebody came out, Dan White got off. And all the gay folk who were out there crying and whining. And this, from the moment Dan White shot these guys to the moment he got off was like 3 weeks. It's the fastest, big thing, murder thing done in America history. Like most things take years, right? This took 3 weeks. And then he's let go, and no one knows where he is, and the police go frigging nuts. And most of the guys who were out there in front of the police department were the kind of gay guys who were down by the beach, pumping iron, have all these muscles, kind of like any one of the muscle guys, right? And the cops come out in their riot gear and start shooting point blank at the gay muscle guys, and the gay muscle guys are like, just bounces off them, and they take the streaming tear gas container and stick up the asshole of the police, right? And then they go into that building and burn it to the ground. And then they go in the police department and burn it to the ground. And they go into the courthouse and burn it to the ground. And then they go over to where all the police cars are. And they did about $1 billion worth. And every news, TV, newspaper, they're all there taking pictures of it. And none of it hit the airwaves. None of it hit the front pages. I had friends down there who were from the New York Times and were part of Mag. Nothing ever got published of what went down there. And my wife and I, Donna Ann, we were redoing an apartment in a building that was right across the street from City Hall. So it was like watching the end of Rome, right? Then what happens is Leplowski and the other two women who came from San Francisco became senators and congresspeople, Dianne Feinstein and the other one who stayed there forever, they came and said, oh, it's so bad. But they were the hidden hand. You know, they were the loyal opposition. They went off, they got voted in straight away and went to D.C. And what you see them doing, like Dianne Feinstein stayed in there in her seat until she dropped dead, you know. Jefferson wanted all laws to be sundowned 15 years after they were passed. You know, he didn't want senators and congressmen to be there more than 3 terms, right? And they kind of had term limits, and they kind of had sundowning of laws, but not really. They didn't, put it. They just had a tradition of doing that. And then, when new generations came in and saw how much money and power they could, marbles, mint marbles. I waited 6 years for Obama. So that chick, she died. We're not going to let him put anybody in the Supreme Court. A couple years later, Downey gets that chick. 15 minutes. That's long enough. Let's vote. Guys, you are chumps out there. Let's see. What else is our friend saying here? Let's see. Is that what you experienced when you died through meditation? And meditation is when you can physically take the auspices of. And that's why people take drugs, psychoactive drugs, because they want to have that experience. They don't want to be disciplined. And by taking the drug and not being disciplined, it's okay once. You take it once and you have this experience, and then someone of knowledge comes and says, oh, by the way, you don't have to take that drug anymore. You had that experience. Let me show you how to breathe or to meditate or to visualize, and you can go from there. Let's see. Oh, that's interesting. Scary. Yep. And that's life. Interesting and scary. But when you realize that all of this is an illusion and you're here in a sandbox to learn, then it's not that scary. Quiet time in the woods. Yeah, but the greatest thing to do. Why do you think I live in the deep green? I live out in the woods, and for a good 20 years, it was like a nature preserve. I had all these there were no people, just animals, bunnies and butterflies and bears and owls and other creatures of the woods, box turtles. They're all gone now, thanks to the cockroaches of California, Texas, Florida, who come in and bought up everything and bulldozed everything. And I went into the woods for half a day by myself last week. And it didn't help, unfortunately. Well, because you brought your anxiety with you. You're supposed to go in the woods without your anxiety. I take some time. I can't go to the gym one day. Again, how many years have you been building this anxiety up, right? Yeah, deep breathing helps too. Yep. Here's 113. Nice glasses, Sensei. Yeah, I like these. Yes. These are the Dollar Tree specials, right? $1.25 for these glasses. And they also come with a case that are as groovy as these things. Let's see. So what else do we have on deck here? Well, it's getting to be around 3. I got everything plugged in. So again, this is the BBC guys talking about Musk.
Can we not have another inquiry? This is a real problem for everyone involved in journalism and involved in politics. You either suck up to Musk or you're abused by Musk. Neither of these things are terribly attractive. He is already tweeting approvingly what Kemi Badenoch has been saying in the House of Commons a couple of hours ago, for instance. And on. Yes, I was very excited that he's supporting Kemi Badenoch, because that means presumably by the time most people hear this.
So listen to Dr.
Steve. It was this large monolithic slab. Looked like it was elevated off the ground.
It is traumatic.
Look, this is the most top secret you've ever heard of.
Matterport.
Here's what's coming. This information is going to come out. The way you respond to it can determine the future of humanity.
That's very true.
Are you ready to shine?
Are you ready to shine? We are so distracted by everything that's going on around us. Plus, we're bought off really cheap. You know. Wesley, what do you got to say? None who deny Jesus appears to seem saying, tell the vision, believe Jesus is God. Well, this is where theology, religion, you got to put it off to the side. Jesus is God, and we are Jesus, and so we are God. God is inside of us. Jesus constantly, Sermon on the Mount, he basically breaks it down pretty easily. He says, all you got to do is, there's, believe in God, and God is inside of you. It's not exterior. God isn't up in the clouds. God isn't in a book and a text. You don't, run your spirit by liturgy. Now, I read the Bible and other liturgic books because I'm a scholar and I like to read it, and it's all in code. There's some great information in those books. You just can't believe the sedentary line. And so you can't deny Jesus, can't deny God, right? But giving it a name, Elohim is the Jews didn't want to ever give God a name for a good reason, right? Because then they would, get down on their knees and bow to the name rather than the spirit. Not forget, let's see, all who deny Jesus and then tell the vision, Antichrist, not forgiven their sins. God is a loving God. God forgives. I mean, read the New Testament. God, and you read the Old Testament. God is constantly pissed off at Israel, constantly talks about Israel as his bitchy girlfriend who steals his cigarettes and loose change. And he constantly is always going, okay. Like when you can find 20 really good guys, I won't wipe out this part of the world. How about 10? Okay, if you can find 10 honest, righteous guys, I won't wipe out the world. How about 6? Okay, 6. How about 3? Okay, 3. How about 1, right? After that, you shall all be under martial law. Let's see. There's the wheel in the middle of the wheel. Yes, I like that. Judgment of Jesus against you all. Now, it's not our place to judge anybody, Wesley. And the wheel in the middle of the wheel, that's a very good. Come on, Wesley, you use the metaphor, so explain it to the cadre, because I have faith in you. Let's see, after that, you shall all be under martial law. Well, we're already under martial law if you don't really, 9/11 brought us the Patriot Act, right? And during Germany, run by Weimar Republic, the most greatest democracy in Europe ever. And within less than 6 months, the National Social Party was running, and they burnt the right down. And they still had the gasoline can in their hand, and they blamed the gays and the communists and the Jews, and they passed a thing called the Enabling Act. And it was all based on American laws, Jim Crow, etc. The Omnibar. Let's see, blend, do not mix. I am the man of the earth. Fine line between worship and idolatry. Yep, that's what I keep saying. Jesus hates the Omnibar and all who take it. Is the Omnibar like a Heath bar or a Hershey bar? You speak from passions of rain men who do not know Scripture. So tell me, what is knowing Scripture? God in the Bible seems to have the temperament of a child. A voice spoke inside your head, or heads? Which heads? I got 2 heads. All of your heads, your voice, you believe is God. No, God is God. Any other voice that I hear is basically a voice in the wind, the voice of Satan, not God. Who I really liked? I liked the church lady, from Saturday Night Live. Satan told you, don't tell the vision of March 31st, 2020. Well, tell us the vision of March 31st, 2020. I'd love to hear it. The way Satan spoke inside your heads, both of them, on those 2 dates. And the very Satan shall make 10 words in 10 hours. Let's see. Trump shall be one of those horns. What does that mean? Trump's horny? Where he's a voice of God. Leslie, you're telling us that Donald Trump is sent to us as a savior? An Omnibar. I like that, Omnibar. That sounds like a good name for a disco. Omnibar shall by law. The Omnibar shall be branded by hand. Okay. Trump shall pass a law that says if you are not branded with a barcode, you cannot enter a store or buy food. Well, that's old school. Basically, with facial recognition, they're not going to have to put a bar on your head or on your hand. Your face is going to be the number, right? And if you are a good bee, part of the state authorized, you could just walk in the store, take what you want, go home, right? And you have to sign up for the 15-minute city, meaning you won't own a car, you won't be able to go anywhere except within the 15-minute city, right? And you will be totally covered by comfort, right? You will, in that 15 minutes, that 2-mile radius of your neighborhood, everything comfortable and will be there. But like you say, you're going to have to basically sign your soul over. Ask me to tell the vision, and I shall. Wesley, tell us the vision. Order me to. No, that's not my job. And I shall keep it shut unto you. Okay. Organ man. Omnibar. It would be, or code nowadays. Yep. Police shall be the doors of all the grocery stores. So of course, well, they won't even, forget police. There'll be robots. We already have the technology. Basically, if you go into that store and you don't have the authorization, you'll have a nice little vestibule. You'll walk through to go get some groceries. I mean, you just went to the store the other day and it was fine. But now, for some reason, you've been taken off the ranks. You walk into that little vestibule and basically, whack. It's like, you ever see one of those little blue light mosquito killers that you hang off your porch, where a little mosquito goes in there and you hear, like this spark, a little lightning bolt, and the is gone, right? So, Wesley, our souls are not our bodies. Our bodies are separate. They're just a bag of water with a few trace elements. The only thing that basically, gives us our body, that we walk around and talk and think that we're something, is the prana of love's co-creation. That's in there in the covenant that God has with us, right? And that's with our soul, right? And not our body, right? And so our body is given to us to be, basically a sandbox to understand can I get? Yeah, question. Basically, India's already done this. Modi one night on a Friday night went on TV around 8 p.m. said, "Hey, everyone who's got their cash underneath their bed, that cash is worthless. If you do not have the money in the bank, it's you can't use that paper money because no longer everyone's gonna get a smartphone, and all transactions in business, you buy something, will be on your smartphone." That's what I'm saying. Your face is going to be your credit card, right? And if you're not a good bee on the list, that's it. And that's one reason why I kind of simplified my life and live out in the middle of the woods, right? And for a good 20 years, it was the Garden of Eden, right? And then the cockroaches came from California and Texas and New Jersey and Florida and et al. And basically corporations bought up everything. Texas was another cockroach town, state, and they basically bought up everything, and they're just laundering their money from their criminal activities. So the three of you there, how about a couple more thumbs up there? Yeah. And so, Wesley, I really like the fact that you showed up. I really appreciate your presence here. And Wesley, it's when you put things in caps, I wish you would put everything in caps so I can actually read what you say. It makes it so, when you do that, it's not screaming to me. It's basically so I can read it. So Jesus signed a light of the dove above my head upon all those in that gang, please. The gang, I assume you're talking about us in the cadre. Yes, that's us. So we are. And Jesus is always here with us. When more than two people are together, speaking of Jesus, speaking in Jesus' name, bango, Jesus is here. Now, that's one thing that always kind of irks me a little about people who talk about Jesus is coming again. No, Jesus is here. Jesus is always here. You read in Genesis, that was Jesus, in the beginning. We're going down. You you gotta put the stuff in capital letters, Liesel, so I can read it. See your hands. These ashes is your soul. These ashes is wages of sin, death. Similitude are going down. You gotta put this stuff into caps, buddy. Thank you, Weasel. Let's see. The omnibar is bad. It's evil. So the omnibar. What is? Like I said, is it a candy bar? Is it a physical place like Studio 54? I mean, what kind of bar is it? Bar of gold. Most religions basically bend the knee to gold. To Baal. Well, but Louis, the basic patience thing is, I'm put here. My job is to be a basically a griot to God, right? And in Latin, the word griot means slave to God's. What is that love? The unconditional love of God. Agape love, right? So when you have agape love in your heart for God's and you are in service to God's agape love, it's not really patience. It's just being what God wants you to be, right? And whenever, you basically quote things and speak with an authority that's not yours, not given to you, really. I mean, I have no authority, right? I'm just a storyteller. Going down shall be brought down off your lofty seats. Well, I don't really have a lofty seat. Brought down hard. I fell out of a third-story window. And I was about 20 feet off the floor on a scaffolding. Somebody hit the scaffolding with a forklift, shot me right off the thing. And this is way before OSHA, and they had the harnesses and all that. Just whee! And we had taken all the windows out because we were going to replace them. We were remodeling this factory building for rich people, right? Lofts, right? And so the opening was, about 20 feet by about 12 feet. And I just shot right through that sucker. Woo! I flew across in the air right out. And I was falling so far down that everyone on that construction site went to the window and watched me. And I was tumbling down. And this was falling down a lot. And basically, there were two dumpsters in the parking lot, right? One had broken up cinder blocks, right? And the other had plastic bags in it that were full of fiberglass insulation, right? So, and I'm tumbling, and I'm tumbling a little this way, and then tumbling a little that way. And my eyes, everything slows down. I can see these guys, giving odds on which dumpster because if I fall into that dumpster with the cinder blocks, I am gone. I'm just red mush, right? Because I'm like falling from the top of that scaffolding out the window and down to three things. I'm falling maybe 150 feet, right? And I make it into the dumpster with the plastic bags of fiberglass insulation. And my head missed the side of the dumpster by about that much, just and poof, right? And they came down and got me and pulled me out. I'm like, but I was still alive, right? The other time I fell was I fell two other times. I was in sixth grade, and in gym class, they made us climb up this rope, right? And I'm just a little skinny kid, and it took me a lot of time. And what motivated me was the rope was between my legs, and I was stimulating that funhouse down there that God gave me, and Richard Lasco, the little monkey he was, he came down to the bottom of the rope and said, "Come on, I want to get on." And he went like this and sent a wave up. And so I'm at the top of the gym going, "Ooh, yeah. Ooh, yeah, baby. Ooh, yeah, baby. Baby, ooh, 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 baby." And, I'm like in 5th grade, maybe. And that wave hits me, and I'm like, whee. And I'm like, again, tumbling down from the roof of the gym. And so the gym is maybe 40 feet up in the air. And this is, again, before OSHA. They would never put a rope in a gym today. They never let people do that. They had a little mat down the bottom. And I'm like, woo, yeah, woo. And I'm tumbling. And everyone is like, all I can see is their faces like screaming and yelling. And Richard Lasco is just looking at me like, oh, that's kind of cool. And I come down, and I'm not like head first or back first or elbow first. I'm like about to I'm gonna step off the step onto the floor of the gym. And I'm going so slow, I'm going, oh, this is no problem. I'm just gonna step here. And I snap my leg like that. The bones came out of my leg, and I'm on the ground, and I don't really feel pain. Later on in life, when I get schooled as an osteopath, I realize that's called shock. And so Richard Lasco comes, everyone's running away from it. Do they come to help me? No, they're like screaming and running away. And Richard Lasco comes over to me. He kneels down, and he doesn't talk to me. He takes his little finger, and he touches the jagged bone of sticking out of my leg. And my leg was like this, right? Normally, you can't really get past this. If this is my kneecap, and this is where the thing broke. And so that was like this, and the bones were sticking out. And my leg was, in opposite direction than it normally should be. And so Richard touched it. I was gone, right? And I woke up hours later. I had been in surgery, and just by the will of God, the world's most famous orthopedic surgeon just happened to be in our little town giving a lecture on this new technique of this kind of jelly screen that when you have the compound fracture like I had, instead of having to bolt it together and all of that, you basically put, if it is jagged and the break is done in a way that it sticks together, right? You can slide the gel thing over and you tighten it up, and then you close up the leg after clearing out whatever ickiness might be there, and then you put this other thing around the leg, and then the cast on top of that. And that's what he did. And then, 2 months later, they took it off. They took it off every 2 weeks just to check my leg. And, they kind of x-rayed it once a week just to make sure it was doing pretty good. And it did. So that. But right now, me being almost 80, that break never really bothered me. It now does. And that's because I have neuropathy. And my mother had neuropathy, and she couldn't even move. I can move, meaning I have to get up and move, but I can move. Let's see. I do have authority, a little authority. Weasel. You can learn from Al Bob and chill out a bit. But Weasel, you don't have to chill out. Just take your authority and put it into love, God's unconditional love. And we are His children. We are God's love inside of us. Now, this body isn't us. This is our avatar, right? It's not us, right? And if you study all of the ancient religious works that are all, if you study them like I have, like I studied to be a Catholic priest, right? My mentor was Cardinal Cushing. Like from when I was born, he was my godfather. I had auspices and access to the Catholic Church like most people don't. I used to play around in the catacombs of St. Patrick's on Fifth Avenue, which is right across the street. I mean, right across the street from Rockefeller Center. And right on Fifth Avenue, right across the street, the big doors of St. Patrick's, right? You open them up, and there's the thing, and there's the altar, and there is this big cross with Jesus on it, right? Right straight down that aisle, right through those big doors, right across Fifth Avenue, right into the big, whatever you call it, this big space, because Rockefeller Center were like 6 different buildings, right? And it was 30 Rock and 40 Rock and RKO on the other side, the big on 7th Avenue, where the big, whatchamacallit was, 6th Avenue. Anyway, one of those avenues. It's where the Rockettes were and all that kind of stuff. But that, and so there's this big thing, right? And there's the doors into all of those buildings. And there's a skating rink, and that's where they had the big Christmas tree in Rockefeller Center, right? And what's truly amazing, there's a statue of the Greek god that holds up the world, right? I forget which one that guy is. But he is straight right in line with the eyeballs of Jesus Christ up on that. When you open the doors and whoop, right across Fifth Avenue, right in, across that, it's not a lobby, but it's a big open public space. That's really beautiful. Got plants and all around the skating rink. They got all the flags of all the nations. And that gives a symbolic reference to the little soap opera that this all is. So we have to take our spiritual connection serious, because it's a covenant that we have with God, and that's called love, right? That's called forgiveness. That's called grace, right? All of those things aren't something that we can, if you read the Bible, it's pretty obvious you can't do, especially in the Old Testament. It's, you know what, Weasel, you know what the Old Testament is, right? It's the Torah, right? And in the the Hebrew religion, there's 3 books. There's the Torah, the Talmud, and there's the Kabbalah, right? Do you know what those books are? Are those sacred books to you? Is the Bible sacred to you, Weasel? Who has a cure for disease and withholds the cure from the dying child. Well, I've died so many times, I kind of realized that death is not the end of things. And our lives aren't ours. Weasel, our lives are God's. This body is irrelevant. This body, is, and, the Old Testament goes on and on about how the body is sin, right? Well, it's not so much it's sin. It's just very lazy, stupid, and very prone to addiction to things like belief and convenience, right? And when you are, write everything off into a liturgy, that's what you are. You are putting yourself into a box of convenience. And like, oh, isn't this convenient? Just so convenient to believe in this liturgy. Cure for dying of a child, and the child dies. What is that? That doctor. Well, that doctor's probably stupid, lazy, and didn't know better. That is what you are. Okay, I agree with that. I'm stupid, lazy, don't know better. The story is so funny. Enjoy your toy TV. Goodbye. See you later, Weasel. Come on by any old time. We love to see you. Because this is the kind of conversation I like to have. But Weasel, I want you to go talk to God, right? And don't be swayed by any negative thing that you may hear God say to you, because if you hear that negative thing, it's Satan. See you in the woods. Let's see. Such on the thing that created this all. Well, that's, an interesting thing. What created this all? You read Genesis, and in the beginning, and there's the thing about the Bible and virtually any liturgy is that it's a code book, right? There's every sentence, every verse can be divided by 7, right? And there are a whole bunch of everything is in a code because every letter is in a code. But you kind of have to know Greek and Hebrew, right? Because Greek, all the back in the day of Jesus, the Jews didn't read Hebrew; they read Greek, right? So everything was written in Greek, and so, but Greek is a great language because it's very literal, whereas Latin and Hebrew aren't, and every language, the Romance languages, have basically verbs that are gender born, right? So that gets even more complicated. But you go look at Chinese and Japanese and German. German's a very, they're engineers. It's almost when if you don't know German and you hear it spoken, you can almost. Now I have a really good eye. I can read languages and kind of grok them. Hearing them because I'm kind of deaf in this ear because the nun whacked me there. And that's why I speak a little weird, because she broke my esophagus and she broke my orbit of my eye. So this eye sees in different frequencies. So, what you are, things that created this all. So, basically, if you read all the esoteric and occult, so again, if we go to Hebrew and we read the Torah, Torah is just, so you take the word Torah in Hebrew and you translate it into Greek, and then you take the Greek root and bring it into English. The word Torah means you suck. And if you read the King James and the Old Testament, which is the Torah, pretty much all of it is God saying, you suck, right? There's no way you can fix this, right? No good deed, blah, you suck, right? And that's because that's the mechanism that a religion uses to manipulate its followers. And virtually every religion is lined up for that, right? And that's why, when you hear, folk go on about how we're a Christian country, the United States, we're not, right? And, that all those Europeans came from Europe for, religious freedom. They didn't. They were slaves, before the black slaves, there were white slaves, and we're still slaves. You're a slave to your salary, right? You're a slave to being rich. When I was working in the corporate world, I was making some serious cheddar, and then I died because of that hedonist life. But I didn't die. I had my life review. There were, balloons everywhere, and signs saying "Welcome home." And there I was in the basement cafeteria of the Catholic school, Hitler's Rifle Squad, and everyone's patting me on the back. What a great job I've been doing, and it kept saying that. What a great job you're doing, meaning it's not over, right? And then, the light came to me and said, we love you, Al. And you're doing a great job, but you're not over. You got to go back. You got at least 2 more lives, 7, so 8, 9, 10, at least 2 or 3 more lives. And, you've experienced everything you've done hasn't been sin or anything. No, it's experience. You've learned everything you could learn from those experiences. Just don't repeat them again. The real sin is when you just repeat it. That is what in the Bible they talk about, fornication. Fornication isn't sex. Fornication is when you do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome that will allow you to be better than. So in Genesis, it's somewhere, when people quote the Bible rather than being motivated by the Bible. The Bible is a great book for motivation. Right? It's like a tuning fork. You read a verse, and if it bing, motivates you, you that's a spiritual connection. Do you trust gods you saw? What if they were evil? Forces you back to earth to harvest your pain energy. Well, yes, I've heard all of that. And bottom line is, if you're consciously intent and aware of that moment you're in, the past is the past, the future ain't here yet, right? The past is, forget about it. It's just experiences. The best thing you could do about the past is basically see what you did with it, right? And is there anything lesson there that's good? Okay, remember that. The rest of it is irrelevant. Future's not here, so why worry about it? When we started this, and I think it was Lou, was it Lou, who we were talking about anxiety, right? So the best way not to have anxiety is not to live in the past or the future, but to live in the moment, because the moment is the only thing you have that is real. And even that could be an illusion by the context of this, right? Everything out here in what, for years, as a scholar, as a everything I ever did, when I rubbed up against guys like Wesley, and they weren't all religious. There were a lot of people who had that same attitude towards their materialistic life. I'm a professional. I believe in reality, and real things are real, and things I can, numbers at the bottom of the page, and that's, if that's your life, well, right there is sin, right? If you're not doing this stuff for God, right? If you're not consciously aware of the covenant of love's co-creation, right? So so I had two really good friends that I always gave a lot of slip to, meaning I didn't jump on their case about stuff. One was Jerry Falwell, and the other was Billy? What's his name, right? And not Billy Pilgrim, but Billy, the evangelist, right? Billy Graham, right? And I had a boss, a nice Jewish boy, who ran the Fillmore East and Fillmore West and a number of other production companies. I worked for him. I worked under Bob Goddard of Joshua Lights and Pig Light Show. And what was great about those guys, was that they were real. That's the real thing, that they were real. And Billy Graham, I met Billy Graham because I lived in Asheville, North Carolina. I've always lived in places at the best time to live there. So I lived in Asheville between 91 and 99. Now I kind of left around 90. I was leaving because once Asheville paid off its debt, the cockroaches moved into Asheville. But we had this thing called the Artist Trust. There was nobody there. It was great. We could do whatever the heck we wanted with any of the buildings. And this rich guy came, Julian Price, and he bought up all the really great buildings, the public service building and the thing downtown that's a really beautiful place where it's like not a mall, but it is a mall. It's a name for it. But anyway, he bought up all the really nice buildings so people wouldn't tear them down and put up crap. And now Asheville, they have all these, 20, 30-story hotels. And now one of the beautiful things about Asheville was that it was beautifully sunny and you could see the mountains. Now you can't. It's a urban. But anyway, so I left Asheville in 96, but 99 was, 98, I got this gig to basically, because I kept, after 96 was obvious that the real estate guys were coming and buying stuff in. The Asheville was no longer going to be the buckle of the belt. But anyway, from 91 to around 96, Asheville was my base of operations. And I was this itinerant scholar, right? I would get just how I was brought to Asheville. I was I came from New York City in 88 and went to Cornell in Ithaca, New York, and stayed there 88, 89, 90, 91. I left in 91. And I went to Asheville because the man I worked for got me a gig to work for a friend of his who was worked at the Smithsonian Institute, and they, Smithsonian is an amazing institute because they got every kind of science you could. You watch the TV show Bones. She's a forensic anthropologist. I mean, they have exactly that, but they have everything else, every kind of history, every kind of documentation. That's the Smithsonian. And so they had these people who were, experts on the Gilded Age. And the state of North Carolina and the federal government wanted to rejigger Western North Carolina and that whole area for tourism, right? Because it was a dead, just like West Virginia, but even more. But this place, there was a period of the Gilded Age when the rich people were there. All those rich people from Georgia, from Atlanta would come up to Waynesville where they had all these hotels. And I mean, so I was sent up there to do a ethnography of that whole area. And there was a crew. These two women were in charge. One was a really amazing woman that she knew everything about the Biltmore House. The other was an architect who knew everything about every kind of hinge, doorknob, you name it. Another person who was all about the furniture, et cetera, et cetera. And so we were supposed to look at every square centimeter of that building and figure it out. I was sent there because there were technologies in that building that it had Tesla free energy devices. So they had lighting, and they had motors, pumps, and elevators, and they had fireplaces that had these plates, right? Had no wires going to them, but you kind of hit this little switch, and they would heat up, and they were, that kind of heat that wasn't being blown on you, but radiant heat. The fireplaces had no flues, right? They weren't burning wood, right? So that was my thing, to look at that strange technology. There were places in the Biltmore House that had gravitational fields that weren't of the earth, right? So Wesley would probably, totally go on, devil worship. No, it's called science. One man's religion is another man's science, is another man's technology, right? So and that's because it's based on this illusion that we live in, because we are characters all through the Bible. And Wesley kind of ran away, because I was going to say, so Wesley, what do you think of what are angels? What were in Genesis? It's not God saying, I'm making these humans in my image and likeness. No, it says our image and likeness, right? And there's plenty of places just in New Testament that goes on and on and on about, what it is. And I'd love to know what Wesley thought of all of that, right? So, but he bailed, and I really appreciate that Wesley showed up, right? Because he endured a conversation which was righteous, right? And I really appreciate Wesley for being there, right? And I hope he comes back again. But Wesley, I want you to take a good look at Genesis and find all the places that you go, what does this mean? Like the Nephilim. What is the Nephilim, Wesley? And just in Genesis, there are tons of things in there that would make you wonder what's going on here, right? With quoted biblical scripture, right? And why did Jesus, who was Jesus? I go to a lot of Baptist, because around here is the Baptist church. Oh yes, getting back to Billy Graham and Jerry Falwell. So Billy, right? So I did that gig, and then my next gig there was to do the same thing to the City County Plaza, because it just had like 7 layers of basements, just with boxes of photos and keys and books and books of the historical blah 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 of what Asheville was. And me and these girls, we went through that and did that. Then we got another gig to go with the Bureau of Indian Affairs to do the same thing to the Cherokee so they could get on the roll, because they were the biggest, badass, best business Indian tribe. That's why they took them out, because they at the time, the Cherokee Nation was like Elon Musk, right? They basically got Jefferson put in, and that was going. They thought that he was going to be their president. They didn't realize what a white devil he was, and that he was going to kill them all and take their land. And so we basically did, help them out and got them on the roll. And now they own, all the hotels they own gambling in America, right? And whether they are, getting everyone addicted to gambling in a big way as a way to get back for what the white man did to the indigenous people. So Wesley, what do you think of the indigenous people of the world? Hmm? And what do you think of the papal bull that 11th century Pope said, "Oh, white Europeans can go anywhere on this planet and take whatever land they want and kill whatever people, as long as those people are black and not Christians. And if we can turn them into Christians, we can own their land," right? So, what do you think about that, Wesley? Wesley, you really have to look at everything in a larger sense. And like I said, you have to see God as love's unconditional, right? And that covenant is between you and God, right? Your spirit, your soul, because your soul is God, right? Your body isn't God. Your ego isn't God. When you quote with authority, that's your ego speaking, not God's love. So I'm really glad you showed up, because you represented. You really did, and in a righteous kind of way. And God is proud of you. Now, I hope you're listening to what I'm saying, because now you should pray to God so that God's love will come into your heart, because pretty much you're so scared of Satan that it's getting in your way. Do you trust your guides? So, good old Ronald Reagan said, "Trust but verify," which was actually a Russian saying. Mikhail Gorbachev told him that, but he used it to put it on TV. Trust but verify. And Nancy Reagan, she's probably the best politician we've ever had, because she said, just say no. Pretty much you should just say no to everything in the physical realm, right? And then deconstruct it through God's unconditional love, right? And Jesus's, and the only way you can get to God's unconditional love is through Jesus's unconditional forgiveness, right? So if you are walking and talking this, and if you study study the Vedas, you study Buddhism, you study Shintoism, you study every religion, you basically see this same pattern of unconditional love and unconditional forgiveness. You see, there is only one God, unconditional love. There is only one covenant. Your covenant with God's unconditional love, where you have to be the slave. Like I said, the word doula in Greek means slave. Agape love. slave to agape love, right? And a lot of Baptists want to tell you about agape love as that's only God can have. No, you have to. That's the unconditional part of God inside of you. That's love. That's the agape love. Right? Plato goes on about all the other loves, and you should read that too. Plato's treatises are pretty right on. Same thing with Mr. Geometry, Euclid, right? His writings are great poet too. So anyway, Billy Graham. So I, after around 93, I've done all these little projects, and I'm involved in a lot of social things. And I get involved with John Hopkins, and they are backing an entity that's studying education in the United States, and they're trying to put together a program called the STAR program, which would mean turn every student in America into a star, right? And it was bastardized and prostituted, that program, and turned into Dick Cheney's No Child Left Behind. And within the context of COG, go look up COG, continuation of government, and what Dick Cheney and what's his name, the guy who was Dick's Secretary of Defense Department, Rumsfeld. Let's see. Question about the black shadow beings that show up during lucid dreaming. What are they and how to stand up to them? Well, the best way to stand up to any darkness is laughter, a sense of humor, right? And did you see me get angry at Wesley? No, I just smiled at him, right, and invited him in. And so you don't invite darkness into you per se, but you invite darkness to get involved with love's co-creation, right? So if you are there serving love's co-creation, you can't be harmed whatsoever, right? And if you're in a lucid dream and you see this dark shadow, all the dark shadow is really is a reflection of your dark shadow, right? So step back, focus some, prana, God's loving light onto the shadow, and you can see what it is, right? And so I started working for these people on this program. And so I would be sent to different parts of the country to go to the worst city or town in that state, to the worst neighborhood, to the worst school, to the worst classroom, to the worst kid, right? And then I would study all of those levels, getting to that. And that worst kid was like the shadow. Very interesting that you bring the shadow up. The kid was the shadow of the darkness of the education system, which was there to basically, just go read, what's his name? Dewey. Dewey invented our modern industrial school system, right? Where we learn writing, reading, and arithmetic. And go read about what he spoke about, the shadow. He actually spoke about it. And same thing with the guy who, the nephew of Freud, that started the starts with a T. The something institute starts with a T. Anyway, they all talk about the darkness of the spirit of the political situation. Anyway, so I was being sent around the country, and the only way to get there is, I would, I had a car, and I would drive to the airport, and you parked in the parking lot, right? And you went through this thing, and you put the little receipt on the inside the car in the window there, so it couldn't blow off. And then when you left, and you could be there away a week or two, and it wouldn't cost you more than $3 to keep your car there. It's a gigantic big lot. It's maybe at any one time, it's like you could probably park 300 cars there, and at any time of the year, it was usually no more than 30. So it was, sometimes I when I started doing it pretty regularly, and once the guy who was running that airport knew that Billy Graham was my butt, because what happened was there was 3 airplanes that would fly in. One that would fly in at 6 in the morning, another that would fly in at 10, another one that would fly in around 6:30 in the evening. But the 6 in the morning one would fly out around 8, right? And the one that got there around 8 or 9 left around 11. And then the one that got there at 2, 3, or 4 o'clock, whenever it was, would leave at 8, right? So there were 3 airplanes that flew in and 3 that went out. And they all came from Charlotte. So if we were going to go to Chicago or LA or any of those, first went from Asheville to, but now Asheville is such a gigantic airport. There are flights from Paris and LA and Chicago and New York that fly straight to Asheville. But anyway, so I remember the first time I got there, and there was no airport. It was the tarmac place you could, and there was no fence around where the cars were. You just park the car there. You went through this gate, the thing spat it out, you put it there. And then when you left, there was a guy in a little shack, right? And like I said, some days the thing would just be up and you didn't pay anything. So anyway, and there was not an airport per se, but there was this 3 airplanes that flew in. It was the same airline, whatever it was. I forgot what airline it was. And it would fly to whatever the main hub, Delta or whoever was, that's their main hub. That was the guys who flew into Asheville. Anyway, and from, there was 40, which was interstate, and there was 26, 11, 27, 19, which was going to be an interstate, right? And the 11 part of it was, and the 19 part of it was the Dixie Highway. It came from Florida and went up to like upstate New York and other roads, right? But in Nashville, they were like and it was a 2-lane road. That was it, 2-lane road. And I would go from wherever I was in Nashville, and I would drive there, park the car, walk across that road, and there was no fence around the airport. And it was like this kind of little sheddy thing that if it was raining or snowing, it was like a bus stop. And you could stay under it and stay warm or out of the sun or whatever. Or dry if it was raining. Anyway, so basically, the first time I did that, I'm there to get on the airplane, 11 a.m. airplane. And there was like a bench, and then there were like some living room furniture in there, like a lazy boy. I mean, somebody from the airport just kind of stuck it there. And this really tall guy is sitting in the lazy boy kind of thing, and he's reading something, and he's got a little briefcase, and I have my briefcase, and he's wearing jeans, cowboy boots, a nice shirt, cowboy hat, right? And so anyway, I sit there, and I have a notebook, and that's about it, And I also have like an envelope that was mailed to me with what they wanted me to do, right? It was almost like, Mission Impossible, when Jim, you can take this assignment, or, the envelope will catch fire, and, Anyway, so the first time I got there, and I had my own, I didn't have a briefcase, I had like a pack, right? And, I had a pair of slippers in there and a pair of shorts and maybe another T-shirt and maybe I was wearing a jacket. And anyway, and it was kind of springish, right? And it was kind of not hot, but not cold. It was like, Goldilocks, just right. So he's sitting in the lazy boy, and I look at the wooden bench. I look at the other lazy boy, and I said, that's a good idea. And so I'm getting a lazy boy. And instead of reading anything, I just go back and I fall asleep. So airplane comes and he kind of wakes me up. Hey, wake up. The airplane's here. And I said, oh, okay. Get up. We get up the steps and the stewardess knows it. She goes, you know, Billy, so they actually have a first class and a second class, right? And all it is that the first class, they've taken one row of seats out and moved them so you get a little more leg room. That's about it. And if you sit right at the bulkhead, there's a lot of room, right? It's like you could just really stretch out. So anyway, my ticket says whatever, and the woman says, well, there's no one else on the airplane. You can sit up on the bulkhead too. So I do. And so Billy and I start talking, and I have the Course in Miracles in my thing, right? He's got the Bible, I got the Course in Miracles. And he goes, I've seen that book before. That's quite an interesting book. He goes, so he knew enough to know that the Course in Miracles had a textbook, had a workbook, and had a teacher's guide. He goes, do you teach that? He goes, well, I said, I have. And I'm now doing a study. He goes, study? He goes, I said, yeah, I'm an itinerant scholar. And I gave him my business card, and it said XAX Research, Art Party Ringleader, Cultural Provocateur. And he just smiles and he goes, what's the XAX thing? No, he goes, that's what I am. I go, what? He goes, oh yeah, I'm a cultural provocateur. And so we said, and so I have no idea this is Billy Graham, right? Because the students just call him not Reverend Grand or Mr. Grand, and he's not wearing a suit. And so we talking, it takes about 40 minutes because it's a propeller plane, not a jet. And we fly from Asheville to Charlotte, and getting up and to cruising altitude, and then flying to Charlotte, and then going around Charlotte a few times and landing. It took about 40 minutes. Anyway, so we have. He goes, "Where are you going?" I said, "Oh well, I'm going to get on another airplane, and I'm going to go to Kansas City." And he goes, "Oh, so I'm getting on another airplane too." And maybe I'm going in that direction. And he said, "What flight?" I said, "Delta." So maybe. So anyway, he goes, we look at our thing. He goes, "No, not the same thing. You're like gonna go. I'm not going there." And so, but almost. But they're almost leaving at the same time in like about an hour and a half. There's actually a nice restaurant. So we go and have lunch, and he actually said, "Let me take care of this." I said, "Thank you very much." And so we talk more and more and more. And he goes, "So do you?" He goes, I fly out of here often, at least 2 or 3 times a month." And I go, "No, so do I. Well, I'm going to, because I have this project that I'm going to go all over the country and look at things." The Tavistock Institute, those are the guys. Go look them up, Tavistock Institute. Let's see. We'll ask Google. Tavistock Institute. The Tavistock Institute of Human Relations is a British research and consulting organization that studies human behavior in groups. That's the guys I work for. And they had other things. Show more. Let's see. The Institute was founded in 1947 by Wilfred Bion and John Rawlings Rees and Elliot Jacobs, and also another guy who is the nephew of Bernays. The Institute helps organizations and leaders to understand the dynamics that affect the work of those organizations. Exactly. That's what I did. That was my whole thing. And I work for a thing called the BBI, Bureau of Behavioral Investigation. Let's see, they have that. It was a bit one of their esoteric organizations. Let's see if they have Bureau of Behavioral Act. Bureau of Behavioral. That's what it was called. Institute for Behavioral. No, the BBI. The Bureau of Behavioral Investigation. They have the FBI's Behavior Analysis Unit, Department of Investigation Support, Law Enforcement. We didn't do that. We were a larger entity. Let's see if we can. Like I said, it was part of the Tavistock Institute. BBI, part of the Tavistock Institute. Innovates a hub of genomic research and precision medicine and behavioral investigation. Burton Blatt Institute, Program Development Research, Public Policy Guidance. That's more like to what we did, but we were looking at the human characteristic. Bureau of Business. No. Nope, I guess they don't want to talk about the people I work for. Anyway, let's see. Question about Black Shadow. Okay, thank you so much. Let's see. Okay, I will look Dewey and his talk on the shadow. Thanks. Okay. And there are way more other people who talked to, like, what's his name? Oh, Young. Young talked about the shadow self. That's another person you should go look up. Oh, let's ask. Carl Jung's shadow. See, Carl Jung's shadow is a concept analysis psychology that describes the repressed, hidden, guilt-laden aspects of the unconscious. Jung believed that the shadow is the counterweight to the persona or the self that people present as to others. Okay? I think that's a better. So Carl Jung, he writes about it. And there are other, let's see, let's go look at other psychologists that talk about Jung's shadow. The concept of the shadow is primarily associated with Carl Jung. Other psychologists have discussed and build upon his ideas about shadows. The Jungian shadow, the Society of Analytical Shadow Psychology, Wikipedia, the writings of Carl Jung. Anyway, so I think that'll get you on your way. And it's almost 2 hours. There's 4 of you here. Any more questions? What are your thoughts on the things that created this all? Well, that whole idea that we are a Matrix. You know, the Matrix movie, wasn't invented by those guys. If you go read about esoteric cultures, and within the mystery schools, if you go look at the Thule Society and Nazi Germany, they went gaga on all of that. Hess was the SS guy, and he was all over it. And that really is a good thing because they take a lot of ancient knowledge and then just go whack job with it and put in it in any way they want to, which is a really, really good example of what a lot of religions do. And that's when religions mostly are cults, right? If you are, going to damn anyone to hell, pretty much that's a cult, right? So that's about that. Anyway, I got to get up and walk. Anybody got any other things? Let me get up here. I've been sitting here way too long. See how much it's snowing. You got to stand up. I can't sit again. Let's see. Okay, I won't do it up. Let's see. Silly question, but curious. There is no such thing as a silly question. What would you do if you knew you only had 30 days to live? Okay, so that little question is quite interesting because basically every day I wake up, I expect to be dead. My physical attributes at this point in time, via my genetic predilections of my mother and father, pretty much I got everything. Like my dad, he died at 98, right? And he lived 98 years, and he never had a single cavity and really didn't brush his teeth, right? I mean, kind of did, but not really. Not like people anally brush their teeth today, right? Never had a cavity, never lost a tooth, period. My mom, she had cottage cheese for teeth. By the time she was, 50, I mean, she had lost a lot of teeth. She had a lot of crowns. Her teeth always sucked, right? So she brought us to her dentist, who is like the dentist out of Little Shop of Horrors, that Steve Martin paid. Anyway, the guy was really, so he did everything he could to really screw up your teeth. And my brothers and sisters all have terrible teeth, A, from my mom, and B, from that dentist, right? So I have, the worst, right? And so my mom, because of what she did, when she came to New York at 16, brilliant. She went to Roosevelt Hospital Nursing School, Within 2 years, ran it, was head of it. Meaning there was a guy with his name on the door, but he was just a, got the job because his family had connections. And she took over and ran it, and he let her do it because it made him look good, right? And by the third year, she was like virtually running the whole freaking hospital because she ran the nursing school. She basically, assigned the nurses to whatever they were going to do, and she had her own little business. And this was right in the heart of the Depression, right, in the 30s. And so she basically, and rich people had stuff, and they may have had, they had real estate and things like that, and etc. But they didn't have a lot of liquidity, right? And they were just living on the edges of their gilded edge family, right? And so, grandma would need a nurse. And so my mom would take one of her students, bring it over to the rich people's house, and, that would be their nurse. And now they had no real money to pay my mother, but they would own real estate. So they would give her apartments. And Forest Hills, this guy built Forest Hills, and the Depression came. So he gave my mother, not gave, but let her stay there. This big, beautiful apartment that had a ballroom and had like 20 bedrooms, and each had their own bathroom and a place to have, just an amazing apartment, right? Because this place, Forest Hills was not only the playing tennis place, but had a big stadium and, for all kinds of things, and had a big theater and had a big this and a big that and all these fancy apartments. It was like, the first kind of gated community. And my mom got that. And there were other rich people that had department stores. And my mom was dressed like, so her best friend was Aunt Gracie and Aunt Wen. And those three girls ran everything, right? And not only did they have the power, and my mother was big into manifesting political power, right? And so she knew all of the guys who ran Tammany Hall, and they all were, big houses and, needed medical this and medical that. And so she really had it unbelievable, right? And so she had this big house, and every Friday and Saturday, all those rich guys would come, and they would have a big, everyone fancy dresses, and all the rich guys would be wearing tuxedos, and basically the girls had their own rooms, and so they took the boys back. And basically my mom was a pimp, or what they call the female version of pimp. But anyway, however nicely you want to put it, because everything was genteel. And so that was my mom. And so when I grew up, all these people were around me, who had power and connections, like Thomas Merton fell in love with my mom, and he was Methodist. And my mom said, "Oh, Tommy, you're sweet. You write these poems to me, and I like that. That's cute. But I can never date you because, I basically am Catholic. You're Protestant, and unless you became a Catholic, you could be my friend and you can write me poetry, but that's as far as this is going. And you're really smart, and I like smart people, and we can talk about books and have coffee because we both like coffee." Anyway, so he went off to become a Catholic so he could date my mom. And little did he know that he was going to fall in love with Catholicism. And he did. And go read Thomas Merton's Seven-Story Mountain. And he basically tells a story. My mom's in there. Right? I remember being in 6th grade reading that book and, meet my Cheerios. And, Mom, this book here. It sounds like you this guy, Thomas? Oh, Tommy. Oh, yes. That's the man who comes to Thanksgiving with your third cousin, Rob. John Steinbeck was my mom's second cousin, so John was my third cousin. Anyway, And they would come to Thanksgiving dinner, and Thomas Merton and him, and it would be the three of us at the kids' table. Everybody else sat at the big table. The three of us would sit over at the card table, right? So that's what I grew up around, right? So I had a spiritual, theologic, intellectual upbringing that most people don't even come close to. And see, if you were rich, you would be exposed to that, but in a very, what's the right word? Not a real way. You just kind of wore it on your sleeve. I'm rich, so I know this stuff, right? And that's, guys who go to, fancy colleges, like Brown and Yale and Harvard, they really aren't quite any better than other schools, but they are considered whatever they call those schools. And I worked at all those schools, John Hopkins and Yale, all of them, So it's what you do with your life that counts. So the question, about what would I do if I knew that I was going to die or only had so many days. Well, after I died the first time, and I consciously knew I died, and saw, like I was up on the ceiling looking down at the medical people trying to revive me. When I came back in the body, it's not like I forgot that. I remembered it and said, you know what? I think that's like a great gift given to me. To give me a perspective of that. Yes, my body is, this body is a sick body. It's not like super duper, like I'm a Superman. I'm great. I'm the best. I'm the this. No, right? And that I, whatever skill sets I have to develop them to their best for service to God. Because when I died that first time and I was up on the ceiling looking at them trying to revive me, I had this sense of God's presence. Now I've had that since I can remember, since I was a little kid, 2 years old, and or even younger, when I was always sticking a knife in an electric socket. I kind of understood about God. I would feel love and happiness and joy and grace. Having, not belief, but what's the blessing of not belief, faith, right? Faith is a great sense of love, right? So I would feel all these things, right? So at first time that I really, I died when I was born. I don't quite remember that. I died again when I was 1. I don't, remember being sick, and I remember, coming out and going, I want to go back in. So, but the third time was, when I was about, how old was I? Maybe 5, and I keeled over, right? And luckily, I keeled over. I, had pneumonia or something, and I was either in the hospital, getting ready to go up to a ward, or was in the waiting room or something like that, and I just keeled over, and they kind of, luckily I was in the hospital, right? I didn't have to go anywhere, because they didn't have, they did not have EMTs or ambulances until the 1970s. And then they really didn't have them until, like, in a lot of places until the 1980s, and it wasn't ubiquitous until the 1990s. Anyway, so and that time when I died around 5 or whenever that was, I was up on the ceiling watching them bring me back to life. They didn't have but they, they had a little mask on my face, and they were pumping air into my lungs and pushing on my heart, and they got my heart going, and then I kind of slowly kind of got sucked back into my body. So I've had an understanding of that death thing. And so pretty much when I go to sleep, I prepare myself to die. And when I wake up, I'm like, oh, good. And it takes me a good at least 15, 20 minutes to an hour to get everything. Just like you saw me getting up out of the chair, it's kind of like that. My body, I'm not quite in my body. Right? So, but I have it when I wake up, I have this great sense of love's co-creation. Like, I'm very happy you woke up. Okay, good boy. You decided to have one more day to be my agape doula. Right? That's my job these days. It's the agape doula, right? So that's what I see. Let's see. 30 days. Well, that's amazing. You had, yep. Sorry. You come. Stories I had you tell once blew my mind. And so everybody has a life like I've had. They just don't live it in a conscious intent to be the best in that moment. You have the life I had by being your best in the moment, right? And I really had a number of people. Michael Steve taught me that when I was a little kid, 2 years old, 3 years old, because if I wasn't with my grandma and I was with my parents on the weekends, if my grandma was going to take me, they would take me to my Aunt Went and Uncle Steve's, and they had no kids. And Uncle Steve was an engineer, and in the basement he had every kind of, you name it, and he had all these Alll manuals, which were the YouTube of their time. I mean, if you wanted to do anything engineering-wise, build anything, do anything, construct anything, the Alll, the reason why I passed my master electrician's test in New York City was that it was based on the Alll's study guide of 1928, right? And they did that because I took the test in, I guess, 1984, right? I was 34 years old. And so, but I had master licenses from from Long Island, from New Mexico, lots of other places I had gotten license. But New York one is like, it's like the real deal, right? And so I had that book. I got it when I was like 4, and Uncle Steve gave me all, if my mother and father threw all of the kind of stuff that Uncle Steve gave me. And if those Alll's, I've seen them on eBay for like 10,000 a book, So anyway, and my whole life has been that because I've traveled so much. I mean, you can only hold on to stuff if you stay in some place all the time, right? And I never quite did that. And I would leave it at certain places, and certain friends were really good, right? Who would never throw the shit out. My parents threw my shit out because they gave it no value, right? And all my books of negatives, when I took photos, when I was the ME at, Madison Square Garden, at Carnegie Hall, Fillmore East, at all those nightclubs, I took pictures, I had a great little Rolex. It was a motor drive that you wound up, and it was a half frame. So it was like about this big, put 35 millimeter film in it. And instead of getting like 36 pictures, you got like 72. And they were great. And I could know what this frame was going to be. And then I'd wait and take a picture of the other frame. So the two together that I would print out would make a very interesting image. So I had pictures of all kinds of great artists and events. And my father threw them all out. Right? And he did that a few times. Now, after the first time, I shouldn't have. But the second time, I built him a house, and I built a secret closet room in there above the garage, And I went away, and I came back 2 years later, and he goes, I'm going to show the house. You're going to come here and show the lady's going to buy it. And she was a Wall Street lawyer, and she was quite interesting woman. And she made a lot of money. And so my dad, so this was like in 86 when the savings and loan collapsed. So real estate was like in the basement. And so he sold this house to her for $400,000 or something like that, which was like, whoa. But she was ready to pay $1 million. That's how good this house was. This house was one of my better jobs. It was like my parents bought this farm in Remsenburg, Long Island, and the homestead was from the around Revolutionary times. Everything was a log house, and it was amazing, right? And the ceilings were like, 6 foot, and because they didn't have real heating, and every room had a fireplace, and that's what heated the. So they had low ceilings to keep the room warm. Anyway, and it was like rotting away, and it was didn't even have foundation, and so my dad, you always have these great ideas for real estate, and you've lived in all these places, and then, I tell you that it's a piece of shit, and then you move away, and then it becomes worth $1 million. So okay, I'm bringing you in here. I just bought this farm for nothing. It's got some pretty interesting buildings on it, and it's a beautiful neck of the woods. And if anything's going to be worth anything, this neck of the woods is going to be worth something. That's okay. That's right. So we started a business, and I got my electrical license here, my contracting license. And really, it was no big deal because I had another license from when I lived in New Mexico. And the guy who was head of the building department of Suffolk County, we had the same name. He loved the fact that I had the same name as him. Same middle initial, too. Look at these. I fall asleep. Vitamin one. So anyway, basically, what happens is, so he buys this farm, and there is this house, pre-revolutionary house, a couple of slave houses, right? And then a big barn that was like, pre-Civil War, right? And there were all kinds of, so I'm like putting in water lines in the property and stuff like this and that. And it's beautiful. The farm is maybe 4 acres, and the rest of the farm, my dad was too stupid. He could have bought the whole 100-acre farm for like $70,000. He bought the 4 acres that the farmhouse and the barn were on for like, $30,000. Anyway, so I go to start to work. I'm not going to do this all by myself. And so he then buys another house in a place called Sayville. And there's another town just before Islip that had been a fishing town, a town where, like, well-to-do, not zillionaires, but, folks along the railroad went there, the South Bay, and then there's the Atlantic. And so, and the South Bay is a big, long thing. It goes from Freeport to almost to Southampton and all the Mauritius and all those places. So anyway, okay. So my parents are still living in New York. I'm trying to figure out how to fix this house. And then he buys this other house that I'm going to, because they're going to move their business from Brooklyn out there to Long Island. And so they buy another piece of property and further out there past Remsenburg. But they bought all that stuff kind of at the same time for nothing. And of course, their business was doing really pretty good. So, my dad's smart enough to realize this. So we started a real estate business. There's a factory building. there is that place. And so the first thing, the one building that I could kind of renovate myself is the Sayville building. That was a nice commercial building, had apartments upstairs. And it had a fire. So the guy took the fire insurance money, but to get it, he had to put a good roof on it. So this building was a concrete building with a really good roof. Right? The rest was kind of burnt out on the inside, which meant it was kind of, and they kind of also demoed all the real burnt out crap. I mean, the concrete walls were stained with the burn, but the interior walls were gone. So, and the floor between that was kind of not really concrete, but it was built in a way that it didn't catch fire. So this building was in pretty good shape. And 2 buildings down, it was like the hood. 2 buildings the other way, there was a kind of had been fancy shopping center, not quite a mall. And that neighborhood that was right on the water in there was going to be in pretty fancy, very nice houses. Right? So I start working on this, and guys start dropping by. You need any help? And I talk to them. One guy comes by, and I'm trying to basically, it's this big plate glass window that's deadly kind of, it's not safety glass, meaning something cracks it, it's going to come down in big shards and cut you in half. So it's a real insurance no. I'm amazed that it survived the fire. And it's in pretty bad shape, and it's really gigantic, so I can't just take it out, or I can't just throw a rock at it. And so this cop would come by, and we started talking. Really interesting guy. And he got the cop job because his dad was a cop, and he'd gone to college and almost finished. And he wanted to do something between finishing that and going off and doing what he was going to do. So okay. He would just kind of drive his thing and park it in the that parking lot, and there was a Chinese restaurant, and we'd hang out in the Chinese restaurant, right? And he was a night guy, so we wouldn't have to do anything, right? So he played chess. So anyway, one day he had just got himself a Glock, right, when it just came out, and he said, "Wow, I just got this new gun," and he's playing with it, and as he's playing with it, it goes off, right, and the bullet hits that window, and it goes crack, and just rains down little chunks of glass, like it was safety glass, but it wasn't. It was just the way the bullet hit it at a certain frequency, blah, blah, blah. And the guy who'd been across the street and told me he was a carpenter comes over, goes, "Wow, what was that?" And I said, "My friend here was playing with his new gun, and it went off." And he says, "Okay." He takes out a little pad. He writes his stuff down. He have an account, and I did. I had an account at a construction place. Have this delivered, and I will clean this up, and I will put plywood in there, and I will do it in less than, from once the materials get here, I will have this all done in an hour, which will show you the level of my ability as a carpenter. And he does. His name was Barry. And he had his own company, and he kind of leveraged everything. And then he kind of couldn't pay the bills, so he started selling drugs in the days of the cocaine. So he got to go to jail. It's his first time. It wasn't kilograms, but he got found with a few grams, and so he went to jail for a little bit. He lost everything. His wife left him, etc. And to pay his bills, he kind of hocked all his everything, and his tools were still in the place where you hock things, a hock shop. So we go there in my truck. We get all his tools. There's no place to stay at the hock shop. I get 2 beds because I was just sleeping on a table, and we start, working on that building in earnest. And I figure what it is. My brother had 2 sons, and when they would come home from school, they were teenagers. They would be our laborers, right? And they were like chuckleheads. They didn't really learn anything. Because Barry could have taught them a lot. He taught me a lot. And so we basically built, like within 3 months, we renovated the whole thing. 2 beautiful apartments with skylights, because there were no windows. So we bedroom, big living room with a kitchen in it, bathroom, big fancy bathroom, big shower, big everything, skylights in every room. And the ceilings, I made them high, right? So from the floor to the ridge was about 20 feet. So in the bedrooms, I had decks, right? So it was a little teeny room, but there were decks. One staircase went up here, and there was a deck where we had a very nice built-in table. And he had a friend who was a really good cabinet maker, but still a junkie and an alcoholic. So we got another bed. He slept there, right? They had a backyard. I was going to turn that into a parking lot, because downstairs I was going to turn it into a commercial, because it was commercially, CO'd. It was CO'd for 2 apartments in a commercial space. So I was going to make it a nice office, right? So that needs a parking lot, right? Because it's right on Sunrise Highway. It's like no, right? And so basically, make sure we don't kill the battery. How much battery is left? At least a half hour. So anyway, I go find, in the phone book, a business that's, excavators, right? So I call this guy up, and he goes, "Hi." I said, "Hey, I need some excavating work." He goes, "Well, I'm going out of business." And I go, "You're going out of business?" He goes, "Yes. I the savings and loan crash took me out, but I'm trying everything, and I'm going to have an auction in about 2 weeks." I said, "Wait a minute, where are you?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm out here in Islip." I said, "So what are you going to sell?" And I said, "What kind of equipment do you have? Where's?" And he says, "Well, I got 100 acres, and it's right where Long Island Expressway stops, and Sunrise Way goes this way, and 25A goes that way." I said, "Well, that's going to be worth something someday." But I'm saying that to myself. They said, "And I have a crane, and I have a D6 and a D3, and I got a grader, and I got 2 backhoes, and I got 3 big dump trucks." And I said, okay. So how much you want for that?" He goes, $35,000. And I go, "I'll buy it." Because I had my checkbook for that scene, right? I said, don't sell it to anybody. Don't advertise your auction. I'm going to come and take a look at everything. And if it's what I think it is, I'm just going to buy it. The property, the stuff, everything, right? So I'll go there, and, it's 100 acres, and about 10 acres got a nice fence around it. The other is a farm. I said, "Whose farm is that?" He goes, "Oh, this old guy has I have a house. I rent it to him." So, "How much you rent the farm and the house to him for?" He goes, "About $30 a month." I go, "Well, that's cool." So I have to go talk to him. So I go talk to him, and it's a black guy, right? Old black guy, right? And he tells me the story of everything. He goes, "That guy is the son of the guy who the grandfather started it. The son was pretty cool. And my son, who is, in his 50s and was in World War II, he was running that business for the old guy. And then the son came in and tried to, whip-de-do it up, and he drove it into the ground. And because he spent a lot of money on buying this, that, and the other thing. And he made some good buys, but he didn't have the business to do it, right? I said, okay. So where's your son? He goes, oh, he's working, still there, and his son is there too, right? So I go over there, and there's in that 100 acres, there's not only the farmhouse, there's a barn, and there's a really nice house and another house, and like the slave houses, and a well house, and a you name it house. And it's about 12 buildings on that 100 acres. Anyway, so I then go and talk to that guy and say, listen, so I'm going to buy this, and I would love it if you would run the excavating business. And he goes, run it? What do you mean? He says, I'm going to take you to my lawyer, and I'm going to get you an LLC, and I want you to have this business, right? Because I know nothing about it, but I'm going to need I know what all this equipment can do, and this is what I want to do, and I'm going to have a lot of business, so I'm going to A, need that, and B, where I'm going to be doing this, other people are going to be seeing it, so they're going to want, he says, but no one's building it. It's going to, come on, real estate does this, and it's already been down here, and it's kind of starting to come up, so in a year or two, it's going to be, balls to the wall. And he goes, sure, sounds great. What can you pay me? I said, this is what I'm going to pay you. I'm going to give you everything that these jobs make, right? And that's, we'll get a job. You and I will go look at you will look at the job. You'll come and talk to me, say it's worth, let's say, $20,000. We will look at what other people are charging. And if they are charging $30,000, we will charge them $27,000, and I'll take the 7, you take the 20. And I will, my company will hold the paper on the purchase of this, but I want to put the company in your name. And so he goes, why are you doing this? Because I'm going to make a lot of money, and the only way to make money is I'm looking at your dad, I'm looking at you, I'm looking at your son. You three are righteous folk. You know what you're doing, and so he's not going to, the sale of this is going to be in 2 months. I have 2 jobs for you to do. You do them well, then I know then you're the guy, right? So I take him to Sayville, where the parking lot meets. So they need to have, the county says you got to do this, this, and this. The guy looks at what the county says. He goes, sure. I said, I need a drawing. So, back at the shop, he's got the architect's thing. He does the drawing. And the old guy, the father of that guy, had the, not architect stamp, but mechanical engineer kind of excavator. There's a thing that county had. I went to my lawyer with those paperwork and said, okay, I want LLC in this guy's name. I want to take that business, all of their licenses. I want you to put them into that LLC. Can you do? Oh, of course, I have no problem. That's all right. And so when I did that and went back to the head guy of the building construction guy, he looked at me and said, how old are you? I said, I'm, let's see, I guess I'm 34 years old. He goes, you did all of this in less than 9 months from the get-go, and you got all this going, and I know these people, they're great people, and I like you, kid. You are a righteous boy. Okay. So every time we did a project, so this guy would do all the drawings, hit it with a fan, he or I would take it down to the office, give him the $12, and we would get the permit, right? We never refused. We never told to do something different. And there were one time we did a project where, we did all of that. We got the permit. The inspector went and looked at it, and he wasn't the boss. The boss usually came because he liked coming and talking to me, and he liked that black family. And we'd either go back to their house where grandma would make an amazing meal and we'd sit down, or it'd be lunchtime and we'd go to this Italian restaurant where those people treated me like their son, right? because I went in there, really nice mobster, fancy schmancy, great restaurant, Italian restaurant, where they baked everything and had all the real deal food, and I loved their escarole, and so one day I was in that restaurant, and the guy's cursing a blue storm, and I go, Benny, what's up? And he goes, this stupid place, everything, I get electrocuted. And I said, tell me what's it? It never works. It always shorts this out, then makes that, blows a fuse. I said, show me. And it was like 1920s fuses. I said, no problem, I'll fix it all. He goes, what? Because, so you are closed on Sunday and Monday, right? He goes, yes. I said, well, I'm going to come in here right today and make it so everything works. And, Sunday, I'm going to come in here and take everything apart. And then I'm going to have it all brand new, spanking, everything great, inspected, good to go on by Tuesday at 2. And the guy was like, now I had become because there were no real good restaurants around there. This was amazing, right? Now there was a fish restaurant 2 or 3 towns down where the fishing village was, that was excellent. And those were the two, and they're both Italian, and those were the 2 places, and they were both related to each other. And that Italian restaurant would always have the most amazing fresh fish, and this is also when Long Island had great mussels and clams. Not anymore; it's all polluted. Forget about it. So, and the other thing, scallops, right? So, those were my 2 restaurants, and they were about 20 miles from where I lived. And so that was before I really got my electrician's license and found the excavator guy. I did that. But once I did that, I could never, and I didn't charge him a nickel, because I had all the stuff. And inspector guy went to the restaurant. That was one of his favorite restaurants. He had those 2, right? And that guy told the inspector guy about me, right? And then when I went in, and he said, "You that someone?" I said, "You had the same name I do, really?" And he said, "I saw what you did to Belafonte's." He said, "You did that in 2 days. You rewired that whole friggin' place in 2 days." I said, "Really?" Everything was in pipe. The wires were basic, so there was SRO. So so it was a wire, but nothing was burnt. I just basically replaced the meter hub and the entrance, and the put 2 big panels and a sub panel, and wired everything into it. It was not a big deal. There was nothing really difficult. Right? And he goes, yeah, but you knew that. Most of these morons that I see are electricians. They don't know. They would have like ripped everything apart and did it over. You just did everything to code, and you did it in 2 days, right? He goes, you're all right. And then, a month later, I took the electric test, and he said, "Whoa, okay, you're the dude." And then we got this one building, and and then I met the excavating guy and all of that, and it was like an empire being built in less than 9 months. Right? And so in 9 months, we did 4 buildings. So we did that parking lot, and what we did was we jacked that house that was from the revolutionary times and put in a basement, foundation, and then put the house on top of it. So it was level, flat, and he actually had a like sawmill. We could mill wood. So we took the logs that was the floor, and we milled them so they were, really the best of that old wood on that floor, instead of like using nails, and we basically pegged it. So, and I had met a woman at the Long Island the State University at wherever it is in Long Island. And she was an architect and all about revolution, everything from, 1640 to 1940 in Long Island, right? So we got a little stamp that made it, an international whoop-de-doo place, and my dad got money off from his taxes, stuff like that. And so I was doing this stuff, and my father was like, "Whoa," and we were doing great, And within 2 years, we had 7 buildings, and we had a rent roll of about 40 grand a month, right? And then I bought 100 acres that were right, Southampton was there, and the Mariches were here. It was a farm, had all these beautiful old farmhouses. And again, we were going to jack them up. We jacked them up. We moved them around. We were building, foundations. And my lawyer, which was my dad's lawyer, called me up. And when I came by, I said, "You need to come to the office." I said, "What's wrong?" He goes, "Your dad's, like losing his mind." I said, "What's wrong?" Like, came back from Florida and you've done all this stuff. You own all this property. You own these businesses. You've done all these things, and you never even asked him about it. I said, "No, that's not true. I told him everything that I did, and he just didn't listen. He didn't understand what I was telling him. So I told it to him. And by the way, I recorded it, because I always record everything, right? So, and I had myself a nice little mini cassette legal tape recorders made by Canon came out. Anyway, so I had it all, and I played it, gave it to my lawyer, and he said, "Can I just tape recorder?" I said, "Yeah, I bought 2. Sure, you can have that." And so he played it for my father and said, "Ray, he actually described everything he was doing, and my father got even more pissed off that I recorded it. And in the recording, it says, 'Dad, I'm going to be documenting our conversation so we can both be on the same page when you get back from Florida.'" "Okay." And, he was thinking about whatever he was watching on TV or whatever it was. And so he was pissed off that I covered every detail, everything. But the one thing, which I knew, my dad's a scumbag. My brother worked for my father for 40 years and made the business what it was. And then when my father and him had an argument about it, my father said, "Well, I'm just going to close the business and you get nothing." I said, and my brother said, "But I'm your partner, 50-50. He goes, "Well, you didn't read the contract. You're just an employee." So my dad did to all of my brothers and sisters. That's the kind of scumbag my dad was. But on the other side, he actually had a good side. And in this show, someone asked, "How could I be so patient?" Well, that's because I had a father like that, right? And when you know that shit is going to come, or that person's going to be this way, or this is what it's going to be. And I constantly talk about seeing, your 360 4 blocks down. When you see that, in those 2 years that I worked there, that's why all of those businesses that I set up, I put them in LLCs in other people's, so when my father would do that, he wouldn't own any of that shit. He would have the paper. And so those businesses couldn't be sold for, the way the paper was set, he just owned the paper. So when I bought that excavating company and that property and all of that, it's all in that LLC's name to those guys. And they, by the second year, they had paid off 80%. So when my dad would hand in, "Okay, I got your paper, pay up." And instead of owing 35 grand, they owed $5,000, which they had because they had 20 different jobs going on. They had a nice, unbelievable cash flow. And I was getting 10% of their cash flow. Me, not my father, not our real estate business. Me was getting 10% of that cash flow. And all those other, Barry, I started him up in the LLC of a contracting company. Again, we had all these businesses going through his LLC, not our real estate business. We were the client, right? We owned a property. Right? And So the buildings that we had a rent roll on, yes, they were owned by that real estate company that I allegedly had 50%. But I did read the contract, and it basically said I was a partner, but I was getting paid in a salary, right? So, and if there was ever any stock, I would have 50%. There was never going to be any stock, and so I knew my father was going to do the same thing to me, but all those businesses I set up, I got 10% of it, right? And when I left that neck of the woods, and they were running those businesses, I was still getting 10%. So when Barry's business, he was making, $10 million, I was making 10%, not the $10 million per se, but I was getting a nice little check, right? Same with the excavating guys. They became one of the they bought, asphalt things and, you name it. You wanted it asphalted or concreted or cinder blocked or bricked or stonework. They were, digging the hole. They had it, right? And a lot of the houses that we had properties, we had moved them from those properties because when the contract was signed, those buildings went to the excavating company. And when they would be put down into the ground of that, right, then they would be sold. But if they weren't being put down into the ground, they could just roll them off there, and they brought them over to their 100 acres. And they did what I was going to do. They didn't have an ocean front, but they did it over there, and they built, like 12 really nice, antique houses with Barry and the excavating guys. And so Barry and the excavating family became really, and I got 10%. Right? Whereas the farm property, my father didn't know what to freaking do to it. So he sold it to our lawyer for like $200,000. And the lawyer kept 3 of those really nice old houses as like a template and had Barry, an excavating guy, build 20 house, brand spanking brand new with everything brand new, but looking just like those old houses. And he made about somewhere about $20 million because he sold them in the 90s when all of those .com morons in Wall Street had more money than knew what to do with. And it was just right. And it had on the deed of the property, there was this little stream, and there was a road that came off of whatever road that was. It used, up to a certain point, the Sunrise Highway, and then it stopped being that. It became something else. And this property had a road onto that, right? Had access to that. But there was a stream, and on the other side of the stream is where Southampton was. It was some riches on this side of the stream, Southampton on that. And there was a right of way to build a bridge. And I think it was called, I forgot what it was called. But the road in Southampton went right along the beach. And right where our property was where this right of way to put a bridge went onto that road. Right? And so he got that. So he could, it's like being in Southampton, but it was being in the riches. And like I said, that made $20 million. So when I left, when my dad said, well, I'm pulling the plug. Get out, kind of like John did. That's why when John did that, it never really fazed me because my father had did it a number of times. And and that's why I had nothing to do with my parents or my family or nothing, because my brother did the same thing, right? If you're going to work for me, you're going to dress a certain way. You're going to act a certain way. When I say jump, you jump. And I just started laughing. I said, good luck with it. Well, what are you going to do? I said, well, you got to be kidding me. And I just walked away. Didn't see my brother for a good 7 years, right? Like I didn't see my parents for a good 6 years because I went back to New York City. I went into an abandoned building. I had a nice chunk of change in the bank. And, I had an income coming from all those in those businesses that I set up for other people that I was getting 10% of. And about 3 months after my father did that, I got a call from our lawyer, and he goes, "Hey, I'm going to be in New York City. I want to have lunch with you. Where do you want to go have lunch?" I said, "Well, where do you want to go have lunch?" He goes, "Well, you're the lunch. You build restaurants in New York. I really don't know New York. I mean, I know New York, but I just go to the Waldorf and go have lunch at the Oak Room." I said, "You ever go to Williamsburg to there's a steakhouse here, world famous steakhouse, you know?" I said, "Let's go have lunch there. I'm living in Williamsburg now." And so he goes, "Okay." We go there, and he's blown his mind because it's like in the Hasidic Williamsburg neck of the woods. What's the name of the place? Let's see. How much juice do I have left here? What do I still have? Let's see if. I had to get up anyway. Famous steakhouse in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Peter Luger's. So I said, Peter Luger's. Let's see. Oh, there he is. There's Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Loft steak. Anyway. What's steak and handsome? How is it out there?
It's all right. It's sweet. Little rice.
What'd you bring? Have a seat.
Little rice.
Oh, rice is good. Next time you're out and about, what it could really use. Oh, so you went to the Thai place. So we got that?
Daughter. They come down.
Oh, good.
Early day.
But if I'm not going anywhere, what I'd love, I need some prune juice. Because whenever I put myself in a place like this, it's like not my usual. My body kind of goes a little out of whack. And so I need to. I'm a little constipated. And my little blood pressure medicine, etc., constipates me. And I've been eating prunes that have been okay, but I only have like 12 prunes, But prune juice really makes me flow nicely.
Where do they get? Who sells prune juice?
I would say
Dollar store.
Dollar General might. I know Dollar Tree does. Any good supermarket does. Food Lion, any of that. If you go to Walmart's, they definitely have it. Get me 2 quarts.
No problem.
No problem. And maybe a dozen eggs, because I could put them in a thing of water and put them in the microwave and have either hard-boiled or soft-boiled eggs. Because I'm actually eating canned food. Why'd you lock everything up?
I don't know. I did.
Oh, I guess
What's
like the food room is locked up, the clothes room is locked up, all the rooms are locked up.
She must not been thinking yesterday. She sort of acts a little kooky.
Well, like I said, we're at a place where we're in that changing thing, which is often a tough, difficult point of view, right? So, and we really, because the next thing we're going to do here is going to be way better than what we're doing here now. We have a little medical center, a place where people can get off of drugs, a place where people can use a computer that can really facilitate these people getting a leg up rather than a handout.
Good statement.
Yep, it works every time. And that we will get grant money like you can't believe if we do that. And the way we have our 501c3 set up, we can make each one of those rooms a separate entity to be getting grants to itself instead of just getting it for the whole ball of wax. We can get 50 grand for this and 50 grand for this. And that's what Goodwill does. Have you ever gone to a Goodwill facility? Do you know any of the people who run those things? They're usually scumbags. The guy who's the president for that neck of the woods, he's making $3 million, right? Any of those kind of things that were one of the reasons I left Roanoke is there were a ton of nonprofits, just like churches. There are a ton of churches here. Right? Why are there? Because they're all tax-free. No one's, they're taking money in and they're not paying any tax. They're like rich people, right? And they did that on purpose. Our founding fathers did that. Good way to control these people. They don't have to pay taxes. They'll be our friends. We'll have political pull, right? So, like Goodwill, it's like there was this one great building that when I was in Roanoke and I came back in the early O's, it had been a hotel. And the black people, they were the 7th largest economy in the United States. So when they had something nice, it was like unfreaking believable, right? They may have something really nice and it was just for white people, but they were making the money on it. Like all of those nightclubs that were up in Harlem for white people, they were all owned by run, controlled by black folk. Yes, the mob was giving them the money to do it, but mob knew that let these guys do this. We'll take our cut. We don't have to extort them. It'll work out great. And that's why they had the 7th largest economy in the world by 1960. And so that beautiful hotel, I forget the name of it, but Goodwill bought it and chopped it up. And they had like these little rooms, like women's something center, this center, that center. And I looked at, because they have to host all of that kind of shit as a nonprofit, they were making $20 million for a room the size of the bathroom in the back of the kitchen. Is the water off back there? That's all off.
In there?
Right.
No, there's water in there.
Good. Because I was going to go, once it got really ridiculously cold, I said, I better really check if the water's off. Good.
Now that's never come on.
Good.
Somebody, during the summer sometime shit in the commode.
Right. They couldn't walk into the boys' room.
Yeah. Right. And of course they probably thought the water was on.
Right.
And they flushed it and had to leave it. Seemed like I washed it out once.
I would say the drain works. The water to it probably doesn't. So you could take a bucket of water and flush it.
Yeah.
So that's what it is.
I did that.
So anyway, I was going to check it the other day, and you have it so full of that stuff that I said, "Fuck this! I'm not moving nothing."
Yeah, I wasn't here when they did that. They got a wall hire and put it there. And, once we get through the snowstorm, got to advertise a little more that we've got propane.
We have to. The other thing we have to do is. So who's the guy who comes and checks the heating? Oh, that's another thing. There's nothing in that fridge. Should we unplug that instead of paying the electric bill?
Maybe once we start paying the electric bill. Now, is that coming on?
Yes, he told me what that was why it clanked and banged was that it's steam. And he said that all the lines kind of had to
Now this is electric.
The fan is electric. And so the fan does circulate. Yeah, so it's on. This place would be frigid because that door has to crack all the way around it. If there wasn't real heat other than that little thing, it would be. Did you give your mother one of those heaters? Why don't you give her two of those?
She's got a propane heater like we got at the house.
Yeah, but she's scared of using it.
Yeah. And if she had that, I bought her one of them last year.
What is electric? It's no more dangerous than her heat pump, but a lot more efficient. And you tell me your mother has always been this way. Okay. I want to go hang out with her just to take notes.
She'd have you want the chicken and salad.
No. I dealt with worse people than this.
She went to the doctor.
I know Tim told me the whole story.
I remember she used to go to bed at 8 o'clock in the summer. At 9 o'clock, she'd get up and say, my stomach's killing me. She'd drink Pepto-Bismol, gag.
Well, that's why her stomach hurts, and she drank some stuff like soda pop. I went in there, she had like 10 bottles of that shit. Now, your mom's, and you know the other thing about your mom? She's going to live to be 140.
If it wasn't for a couple things.
No, even with those couple of things. Cranky people like her live forever.
Her foot swelled up. That's reading a different doctor.
But she's not taking her water pills. If she took her water pills, she'd be fine.
Well,
yep, exactly. But because, like I said, I just wanted to hang out with her for a little while and take notes because she
you'd be calling me. Come get me.
No, I would drive there. The only reason I'm not driving is that car. I don't want to like spin off into nowhere land and.
Well, not right. It'd go right now, but this week it was easy because there wasn't nothing out there. But I'm sure your friends are worried about you now because anybody knows you. They say, "What about like the lady that called me, got the house over and lived in Florida." Oh, I'm pretty good at freeze today. And I said, he's got a woman on every block.
Not quite. But this police actually needed me as caretaker.
Yes. Caretaking fortune teller.
Yep. I don't want to upset your wife, so I don't really do that.
She's a wonderful person. But this has proved to me she needs her own space.
Yeah, 100%.
She needs, because get home and she'd be hateful. And I was going down the hall when the heat of the battle, and I'd say something. She'd say, "Pardon me." And I'd go, "Oh, God."
You know what? You're a reader, and so is she. Go to the library and get Jimmy Carter's. What is it when you write your story about you? Autobiography. Oh, yeah, memoirs. They've written 6 of them because they've had different lives. And so the first one, when he's like, comes from Plains, Georgia as a young man, goes to Naval Academy, becomes a nuclear scientist, captain of a submarine that could blow up the world, comes back, runs dad's business. It's really great because he's a total dickhead. And he marries her because she's a cute little girl, got a nice figure, and she's very demure, meaning, yes, honey, but she wants to kill him. She's just like your girl, but she's burying it deeper. And once he runs for state legislator, and she has to go with him and show, right? She shines brighter than he does in the social sense. He's more shy. She's actually outgoing, kind of, but in the most amazing. You read those 6 books, it will put you and your sweetie on the right road, because I've read them, and once he's died, I was thinking about them, and I heard interviews with him about different things, and he was as much a scumbag. You don't get to be a president unless you're part of the club, right? So he was part of that club, but he had a much nicer. He tells a great story about never being a Christian. And did you know that his older sister was a famous evangelist, wrote books and made money, was on TV and had her own radio show and had a big following, her own church, blah, blah, blah. And when he came back and when he got married and he saw that he was such a jerk and, God, why do you, blah, blah, blah. He was scared that everything has been going pretty good and he's just waiting for the shoe to fall. And so he he talked to his sister. And it's all in that book. You and Carmen should read those, especially the first 3. Because then the next. So once he gets out of being president, because once he becomes a politician and the wife shines, he knows to let her do that because she's much better at it than he is. She will get him elected. right? So, and because all the women will vote for him because, he's being such a great husband to let her. Well, anyway, so, and she was so smart. He would have her in the cabinet, when the boys were meeting, and they got their nose out of joint because she'd be taking notes, right? Because he wouldn't remember it. She could just write it all down. She learned stenography. Anyway, she's amazing. So they get out of being president, and they go back to Plains. And first thing they realize is they're broke because he had this big business, but didn't run it. He put it kind of in a trust, and right. And so no one was keeping an eye on it. So he basically goes, we need to make money. I'll write a book. So he starts writing a book, and he realized, I really can't write a book. So he just kind of writes a book and gives it to his wife. She rewrites it, and the editor goes, this is brilliant, right? So the one book you need to read is the second one, where they tell that story. And they realize, because they're now in this house, she's had 15, 20 years of being this, amazing woman. And now she's back at Plains, and everyone's like looking at her like she should be what she was when she was a teenager and married Jimmy. And they realize they can't do that. And that's the one you need to, because they realize they need their separate space. They got this big house, and they had this couple of people who take care of them, and the guys from the Secret Service are there, and so they design, and you should read it because they really design how to have their separate space and still be a really committed. When they go out there, they are a team. So that's you guys, because you are a team.
Yeah, you spend too much time alone.
Who's what?
You spend too much time alone.
I like my own company better than anybody.
I wish them two women that come down here from Hoagie. I don't think you've ever saw them. They look just alike, and they're sisters.
Well, the only girl that I've seen around here that is I was semi-attracted to, because when I saw the girl at length, she was semi-attractive, and I'm old, so.
Who is that?
Blue.
Blue.
Right.
Well.
But once I started talking to her, and especially when she was here when things were nuts, and she really didn't, she was like scared to jump in. And that was everyone who was doing something here, no one told them what to do. They just jumped in and did it, right?
And she was, she told Carmen, said, what can I do? What can I do to practice balls? So Carmen told her to go up right to that room.
Yes. And clean, and she goes, come. And I did it all. And I did it like in 15 minutes. And I watched the floor and the walls and everything. But those roller kind of shelves. And they were so looky. I knew that they weren't going to be right for putting all the new stuff on. I rolled them into there. And
were the rooms locked last night?
No, those rooms aren't locked. And I've taped.
I mean, the
yes,
kitchen.
All those, not the kitchen, but all the classrooms. The classrooms.
They're unlocked?
They're locked.
Were they unlocked last night?
They were locked. Well, I don't know. I didn't check them. I just, the break room was open.
Is break room open now?
Yeah,
okay.
and it was open last night. I mean, that's where you found me this morning.
Yeah.
And the break room is the warmest room in the place.
Yeah.
So, and that's where I go get a can of soup or something and mix it with, whatever magic person leaves those cakes there, those are great cakes.
It's that quiet woman. She's quiet in marketplaces. Comes once in a while, she'll tell you exactly what she thinks.
Right. But she's a great baker, man.
Oh, yeah.
So she has this, she said, multi-layer cake. It's not like what you think, but it was like a swirly of cinnamon, chocolate, and carrot cake and raisins. And I mixed that with a can of soup. Unbelievable. Yummy. So it's not like I'm hungry. But the choice of, they've emptied most of the lockers out. Are they restocking the food room from the lockers? Because half the lockers are empty.
Somebody, Carmen she got a lot of food out there to put in that room because of Mexicans.
Right.
Which is fine.
Well, that's what it's for. Yeah.
This guy wants to bring 2 more trailer loads of stuff, but
Like
if it's all
food?
closed, we don't need it's diapers and dog food probably closed. I know he said 2 things, diapers and dog food.
Well, those things, a lot of people want that. That's
But Carmen, I'm going to ask her to email them and ask them if they can bring their trailers and leave them for a period of time.
That would be nice,
And
because then we could put stuff in them.
well, we could get stuff what we wanted out.
Right. Instead of bringing it all in and moving it around 5 times.
If he wouldn't need his trailers for a month,
Right.
and but I don't care.
Right.
We've won the crowd.
Right.
We got the money. It's paid for.
Right.
And now,
And when we make this move to service from stuff, that's when we're going to make some money.
now it's going from handout to what?
From having them as customers to being,
What was your slogan?
service
From handout.
from handouts to hand up. Right. That's where that's it. Yeah. So, and that will, the major thing, it will be an influx. So people will do their best. And that's really, hand up instead of handouts. So they're not customers, they're neighbors doing their best.
Do you eat cereal?
You got a ton of here. It's not like, that one room has so yes,
We had 1,500.
at least.
I'm sure there's 14, 15 there now.
Yes, there's got to be, I don't know, box like that with other boxes of it in it.
There's about 3 pallets up there.
Yeah. So there's at least, yes, there's one. So there's but every kind of cereal, even oatmeal, is going to kill you. The way it's processed, there is no. The one thing that I could eat that wouldn't kill me is an egg. Even corporate eggs are not going to kill you. Now, you got them in your household, they're much better than those things. But because those things, they do stuff to it, so you have to refrigerate it, and it will go bad within a month. Whereas that egg that comes out of the chicken, if you don't touch it, you just put it into a box, you can keep it there for a year.
I'll call some chickens and see if they're in business.
Did you ever have chickens?
Oh, yeah.
Did you at the office? Did you have chickens?
No, everybody had them growing up. Everybody had chickens.
Right.
And you know what? They're beautiful.
Yeah.
Those roosters, they're beautiful. That fat head that is twisted.
Yeah.
But, that tiny brain. One time we had 40 or 50 pullets.
Right.
So on a Saturday, we were going to put them in the fridge. Well, they started chopping their heads off.
Yep.
And because it's pets anyway, because when we feed them, they just come stand on their feet.
Yeah.
And then walk from here to the highway without a head.
Yeah. It's a little distracting. I've
Yeah.
seen that. Yes.
So I decided right then, I'm not real crazy over chicken. I'm not going to eat it, but I'm not going out of my way.
Yep.
Now, my mom
Yes.
can fry chicken. She can fry it. It's crispy.
Well, let's get her in here and fry. And that's the other thing we need to do.
She ain't kind enough.
It's too bad. Because that's what your mom needs. That's what makes people kind. That's why everybody who's doing this is kind, is because when you help other people, it makes you kind. It makes you have a kind life. So that's why I've done this stuff over the years. It's fun. And that was the other thing about Blue. I said, so when she didn't clean that room out, I said, well, she's not up for this kind of stuff, okay? but she's supposed to be a musician. So I said, let's bring musicians here. Like today, go get your buddies, bring them down here. She had done that. And if she could still do that, but she can't do that. I talked when they were here playing basketball, there were only 3 people playing basketball. And those kids, they were like, and they're not going to be basketball stars either.
But she's worse than she was at first. Whatever she takes, or living alone and that crap. You can straighten her up.
Sure, but the thing about that is there kind of has to. Most of the women that I've ever had in my life have been amazing, have been beautiful, sexy, all the above, because when you're 25, that's all what there is. So, but they had something really special about them. When you have something that special, they're driven to do it, right? So they're driven, right? So that's a good thing. But being that driven, they're somewhat unconscious about the rest of the human race. And so that was always the interesting duality of relationships like that. They were great, they were fun, they were this, and I never bailed for them, but all the girls would basically get to a point where we were a team and they just wanted to be famous unto themselves. That was one thing. Or they thought that I was going to fix them. And what I can do is give you an environment where you can fix yourself. But I can't fix. No one can fix. I was had to practice unless people, it's like when I was totally hedonist and, 250 pounds overweight, I was never going to lose that weight until I wanted to lose that weight because it really didn't matter to me. Women were still attracted to me. It didn't hurt me like it does. Meaning I was doing the harm to me that I didn't. I mean, I kind of, intellectually knew that I was destroying my body, but it was too much fun. I was having a really great time. So why, I can still walk. I can still kind of run. I can still dance. I can still do all those things. And then I died, and that was, oh, this is what happens. Okay. And then I knew I had to give all of that away. I couldn't have that lot. Couldn't keep just a little of it. So I would go straight back to it. And that's what people who have issues don't realize. If you really want to change your life, you have to change your life. And we live in a society where we're manipulated by given an environment of convenience, comfort, and that's about it. We really aren't here to serve God. We go to church a little bit and say, go through the ceremony, but so that's you pretty much your whole life have served God in the strangest of ways, Running the school, you were serving God, right? You weren't being the principal, right? So because Tim is a lot like you. Where did you boys get that? Not from your mother. What was the influence that did that?
I made sure Tim got to do everything I wanted to do. He's always been a good guy. He's never tasted beer or cigarettes. Never cussed, But he's never done any. He helped me in the back of patch, and we worked hard. But he's never had to work at the plant.
Right.
We've worked. He got out of college and went over to the high school where he's at Great Station, and they hooked him up with this PE girl. She done had one husband, and he had 2 or 3 girlfriends. She was rich, but she was stupid.
Really? The PE girl? The PE girl was rich but stupid?
Yeah, had farms. And she was a mom and daddy's girl.
Right.
So they had a baby. He must have had her sterilized with a needle or something. And now they divorced. He had to because she's stupid. And
That's such an amazing thing. That level of stupidity. It's because so that you know what part of that is that our environment of convenience and comfort lends itself to a certain percentage of the population to be
She's got
just
two
plain
farms.
stupid.
Her mother's still alive. Her daddy died. She's
Right.
daddy's girl. She's got 2 farms, all kinds of cattle, all kinds of farm equipment. And she sits on the couch. And they've got a daughter who is about almost 30 now, and she's like an accountant.
So she runs
for
everything.
nice longer, and she works a couple days at the college, and then 3 days at home. Never made one mistake in the accounting, but she'll care about her daddy, and he's sick in the hospital, definitely sick, and she come for 2 or 3 minutes. I wouldn't want her to come anyway. And,
So what is that? Just genetics? What is that?
you know, if you never had to turn your hand in your life and somebody pet you, somebody petted me. If I go home and they pet me and here, let me take your shoe off. Oh, is your toe gone? I have to walk. Oh, make my toes gone. Who took care of you when you were going through?
So bottom line was, I was the last one of 6.
Yeah, but who took care of you when you realized you're not taking off my lights?
Bottom line was, Grandma brought me up, but she had her own life, and we lived in a community where it was a community. You know, so there were a lot of people that were my in. Uncle Steve was an engineer. I always loved electricity. That was my big passion. And I got to start working as an electrician at 9. And the grandpa guy, like invented electricity, local 3.
I'm going to ask you a question. 1960, where were you at?
1960, I was,
What, 3rd or 4th grade?
let's see, I was around 10, so 3rd or 4th grade. I was, we had just moved from a more suburban, almost city part of Long Island out to a very rural where it was just farms and really rich people, and they had
What grade?
a 3rd grade.
10 years later, 1970. Tell me.
1970, I graduated high school. I'm with the richest people on the planet, right? And I wasn't the richest person, but all the interesting teachers in those schools, the thing I got from them was, you know, Al, you're not like anybody else.
1980.
1980. 1980 was...
You're a free bird.
Yes, and I've
You're
already...
in New York.
Right, New York City, I got that down. I have my own career going, like 5 of them. I'm running art scene. I'm running my electric business. I have a couple of restaurants. 1990, I was...
Australia, maybe?
No. Australia was 77. 77 to 80 was in Australia with Donna. We came back.
That's your 80.
And that's my... In 80s, 90s, what happened was 1988, my second wife died, who I truly, truly loved. And New York City was our town. So when she was gone, everywhere I saw was her. And I would just start crying. So I left New York for good.
2000.
2000, I was in Roanoke. 2000, I was in Lynchburg hanging out with Jerry Falwell.
2010.
2010.
Irwin.
2010. 2003, I bought my place, Deep Green. But all I did was make a pad and put the school bus there, and I'd spend 5-6 days. It took me 5 years to figure out what I was going to do with it. And then I met Mr. Excavator. Yep. We turned that into that. But I had my...
2020?
Basically from 90 to 2014, I had my consulting businesses, right? So I was an itinerant scholarly kind of guy. And then from 2006 until I died in 2014, I worked for the desperate lawyers, making I always made just a smidge under 6 figures, but I only worked 11 to 15 weeks a year to make that amount of money. So that's when that period of time from 2000 to 2014 is when I wasn't being Mr. Electric. I wasn't going up and down ladders. I wasn't, I was like making a pretty good salary at doing things I really liked doing, having loads of fun, and I could do whatever the heck I wanted to do.
When did you buy that old car?
Well,
Was it a Kia?
The Kia I bought brand spanking new here in 2010.
Okay, that blue car.
Yeah,
the one you lived in Mountain City.
Right. I got that at in Johnson City on the Motor Mile.
Well, you got your good out of it.
Yes.
All right.
200 and something thousand miles.
All right. 60, I'm here in the first grade.
Right.
70, I'm in the bean patch in the summer crossing the prison up there where you went to church. Picking beans. 80, I'm at the plant coming out of Mountain City going towards Boone that just shut down. 5 years.
Yeah.
90, I'm walking in to the middle school up there. 2000, I walk away from it here. 2010, I'm like you, I'm a year and a half out of 9.
Right.
2020, COVID, whatever. All right, I've got to go. They want me back to eat supper. Be a good boy.
Okay, you know me. I'm always good. That's because I'm never bored, and I like my own company.
Let's see how much it snowed since I walked in.
I mean, this ain't a bad snowstorm.
No.
This ain't even 3 inches.
Yeah. Another week.
See what I did? I have the broom and I made a path so I could see what is that? That's like 2 inches.
Yeah. 2 to 3. Well, we got to do this for about a week.
Yeah. So we had parallel lives because we both started working. I started really working at 9. I was because they gave me a W-2. I got my Social Security when I was 9. Had a savings account. I worked every day because I love doing it. Did you love working in the bean patch? You know what to do. Out of here, buddy. So did you like that? That was fun. I'm going to bring you over here and plug you into the wall so it doesn't lose its mind there. Okay. The battery's in there. How much juice do we got? 35%, and we're being charged. Okay, there's 2 people left. Let me get my glasses. Let's see. Oh, so the 2 people left, 5 thumbs up. Well, I hope you guys come and watch the rest of this show. 3 hours and 34 minutes. Woo! I'm going to go Okay, so what time is it now? It's 6 o'clock, right? So I'm gonna come back at 9 o'clock and do another show. So. Hi there, this is Short. This is a little advertisement. We're going to come to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. That's me. We're going to do a show around 9 p.m. It's about 6 p.m. right now. I just did a show of 3 hours and 35 minutes. It'll. Hi there, this is Short. This is a little advertisement. We're going to come to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. That's me. We're going to do a show around 9 p.m. It's about 6 p.m. right now. I just did a show of 3 hours and 35 minutes. Hi there, this is Short. This is a little. Okay. Because that goes out on the other channel and it does what it does. Okay, I think that's it. We're going to end stream. Yes. Yes. How many people watched?